Chapter 26 3 minutes at the same time, the Admiral's office at the Navy headquarters. Damn it, Sengoku, stop swaying around, it makes me dizzy. Looking at Sengoku, who was fidgeting and pacing anxiously with his hands behind his back, Kong Gang, who was smoking a cigar silently, couldn't help but say. The messenger had already changed to a new desk, and Kong Gang sat in front of the desk with his eyebrows furrowed. Sengoku smiled awkwardly, but couldn't help looking at Borsellino after all. Borsellino, why is it that there is still no news about Darren after such a long time? Borsellino picked his nails slowly and said without raising his head, even at Darren's super high speed, it will take nearly 3 hours to reach the island where the permanent pointer is located from Marineford. Is that so? Zhongguo murmured softly, and a layer of cold sweat oozed out of his palms. It's not his fault. Darren's action this time was too bold, even crazy. As time passed, the pressure on this group of naval high-ranking officials became greater. Others present were also restless. Zephyr frowned, and the Crane staff officer kept flipping through the documents. The cigar butts in the ashtray in front of Kong Gangu had piled up into a small mountain. At this moment, swish, the video Den Den Mushi placed on the table suddenly lit up, and the dim light sprayed out from the mouth of the Den Den Mushi and projected onto the large screen on the wall. A picture suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The sky, the sea, the clouds, and the island in the distance with a pink waving skull flag. Watch carefully. A familiar voice with a chuckle came out as the picture appeared. It's coming. Everyone was shocked and looked up hurriedly. The pink waving skull flag hanging above the island is clearly the flag of the big katakana middle dot mom pirates. Steelbone Sora took a big puff of his cigar. Now it depends on how Darren handles it. Zephyr stared at it and clenched his fists. If it's him, he shouldn't suffer any loss. Staff Officer Crane nodded in agreement. Sakazuki remained silent, but his eyes burst into amazing light. It's finally starting, ha 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 ha. Garp quickly opened a pack of brand new senbei and crossed his legs with great interest. Kuzan was so excited that he was shaking all over. This is so cool. Darren really entered the 10,000 kingdoms. Zhongguo was also excited, and his chest was full of waves. He thought carefully, but couldn't help but confirm with Borsellino. Borsellino, are you sure that the video Den Den Mushi that Darren is carrying can cover the signal? Borsellino smiled and said. Of course there is no problem. If there is no accident, the major naval branches and bases are probably connected to the signal now. In addition, I have contacted many news media and most of the member countries. Basically, where there is a Den Den Mushi signal coverage in this sea, this battle will be broadcast in real time. Well, according to Vice Admiral Darren's original words. Blitzkrieg. Hearing his words, everyone's heart subconsciously hung, and the atmosphere became tense. Can Darren fulfill the oath he made in his speech? Can the Navy take this opportunity to reverse the decline and restore its prestige? All success or failure, honor or disgrace, will be decided in this move. At the same time. Sabayati Archipelago. What is this? The big screen in the square. This is a live video broadcast of Den Den Mushi. What the hell is going on? It seems to be in the sky. Wait, the flag hanging on that island, could it be the territory of the Big Mom Pirates Totland? People soon noticed the picture on the screens on the streets, and their faces were filled with shock. At this time, the deep male voice on the screen sounded again. I am Rogers Darren, the new Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Perhaps I have already heard my name at the previous awarding ceremony. Of course, this is not important, because everyone just needs to stay calm and enjoy this scene. At this time, a hand appeared on the screen, pointing at the island in the distance. Do you see that island? It is one of the islands of the Big Mom Pirates Wangguo, called the Roasted Snack Island. In the next 3 minutes. The voice paused, and then grinned. I will wipe out all the pirates on the island. After the words fell, everyone who looked up at the screen gasped in shock. Similar scenes were being played out simultaneously on countless islands, towns and countries in the world. The heads of the major forces, kings, captains of pirate groups, members of major naval branches and countless civilians all had indescribable shock written on their faces, and they simply couldn't believe their ears. Less than half a day after the shocking graduation speech, that vice admiral actually wanted to take action against the great pirates of the New World. Although Darren's speech was exciting, most people on this sea actually maintained a contemptuous and sneering attitude. If the Navy really had this combat power, they had already taken action to invade the New World and declare war on so many pirates at the same time. There was no need to wait until Marineford was invaded by the Golden Lion to do so. But the current scene completely broke their inherent ideas. Is this serious? Vice Admiral Rogers Darren is really going to invade the New World. But his actions are too fast. North Sea. Lubeck Island, Don Quixote Family Station. Dover. Something big has happened. Torapal, with 2 lines of snot dragging his nose, rushed into the hall of the station in a panic, and his feet slipped and he accidentally fell to the ground. But he didn't care, and said with horror, "That Darren, no, the Godfather is really going to take action against Wang Guo." No one responded to him. The huge lobby of the station was dead silent. All members of the Don Quixote family stared at the glowing Den Den Mushi screen in front of them with horror, and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Doflamingo sat on the soft sofa, leaning forward, staring at the screen with bloodshot eyes under his sunglasses. The hand holding the red wine glass kept exerting force, squeezing the glass into spiderweb-like cracks. North Sea. 321 Navy Branch Department. Base Chief's Office. Flying Squirrel stared at the Den Den Mushi screen with a stern look, his expression changing constantly. Stripes of blue arcs danced between his fingers. He subconsciously picked up another Den Den Mushi, dialed the number, and said coldly, "All members listen to the order, the North Sea Fleet officially enters combat readiness from now on, ready at any time." Flying Squirrel's voice suddenly paused. He took a deep breath and said, "Stand by at any time. Hang up the Den Den Mushi." Flying Squirrel stared at the screen for a long time, and suddenly shook his head with a smile. "What am I worrying about? The current situation is not enough to expose the strength of the fleet." He picked up a cigar, bit it in his mouth and lit it, and leaned back in the chair. "You are worthy of you, Darren, for taking revenge for every grievance. Please everything, thank you very much. Chapter 27 Please me." Just 1 minute before Darren turned on the video phone Mushi live broadcast. In the island of Urn-baked snacks, the town of Expansion. Big Katakana Middle. Mom Pirate Station. A group of pirates from the Big Katakana Middle. Mom Pirates were sitting around, eating toast and barbecue, drinking beer, and laughing heartily. Several old newspapers covered with oil were scattered on the ground casually. The newspapers were shocking news about the 3 people of Golden Lion, Big Katakana Middle. Mom and Kaido invading the Marine headquarters Marineford a few days ago. Ha 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 ha. The Navy has lost all its face this time. Mom's strength is really strong, no one in the Navy can stop her. That Navy Vice Admiral Darren actually dared to say that he would invade the New World. Ha 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 ha. Don't know how high the sky is. If he dares to come to our Wang Guo, he will be courting death. Tisk, how dare he? That's just the weak shouting of the loser. The New World is not a paradise. Even the admirals of the Navy will fall into this sea if they are not careful. This is the ocean of pirates. The members of the Big Katakana Middle. Mom Pirates laughed again, their words full of disdain and ridicule for the exciting speech of a certain vice admiral not long ago. But Brother Owen, is that rumor true? It is said that my mother wants to recruit the Navy named Darren as her husband. Amidst the noisy laughter, a young member of the Charlotte family suddenly asked curiously. The young man named Charlotte Owen frowned and shook his head. I don't know either. It is said that Katakori and my mother had a quarrel because of this matter. He was burly and muscular. He had orange hair that was combed into 3 sections and an orange beard on his chin. He was naked on the upper body, revealing his gnarled muscles, and only wore an orange cape. The whole person gave people a sense of bravery and awe, rushing towards them. Speaking of the name of the Navy, Charlotte Owen's eyes flashed with deep hatred. He did not forget that his two brothers, Charlotte Perosparrow and Charlotte Dafu, both died at Darren's hands. But if he really dares to come to the New World, I don't mind taking his head off. Charlotte Owen said coldly, and her hands clenched into fists emitted an orange-red light. As soon as these words came out, they immediately caused cheers and applause from others. The Navy wants to invade the New World and declare war on the pirates. This is simply the biggest joke. But at this moment, watch carefully. A voice suddenly came from the screen in the square not far away. The pirates were all stunned and turned to look. What is that? The line of the Den Den Mushi has been invaded. Wait, the island in the picture. It seems a little familiar. That is, the flag of our Big Katakana Middle Mom Pirates. The members of the Big Katakana Middle Mom Pirates suddenly changed their colors and stood up. The voice from the video Den Den Mushi continued to sound, like the whisper of the god of death, slowly spreading in this town where countless Big Katakana Middle Mom Pirates members gathered, making the pirates' faces change drastically. Do you see that island? That is one of the islands of the Big Mom Pirates' power in Wangwo, called the Herba Baked Snack Island. In the next 3 minutes, the voice paused for a moment, then grinned. I will wipe out all the pirates on the island. As soon as the voice fell, the hearts of thousands of pirates in the town of Swelling were beating wildly. That Navy really came to Wangwo. Where is he? From the lens of the video Den Den Mushi, he should be hiding in the clouds in the sky. He hurriedly looked up and quickly scanned the sky, drew his sword, and looked for the figure of the Navy as if facing a great enemy. Are you looking for me? The sudden voice made the pupils of countless pirates shrink. The voice did not come from the screen, but from behind them. A chill ran down their spines, and the pores all over their bodies stood up. They turned around suddenly and saw a tall figure who had appeared there at some point. The Navy walked to the campfire with ease, picked up an unopened bottle of beer, opened it, raised his head and took a sip, looking happy. He thought for a moment, took off the video telephone bug on his head, and fixed it on the beer barrel. Well, this way everyone should be able to see more clearly, otherwise the first vision is always shaking, and everyone is uncomfortable. After doing all this, Darren put down the beer bottle, casually took out a cigar and lit it. Looking at the pirates in front of him with vigilant expressions, Darren's mouth corners raised a reckless arc. Then, you heard it too. A dragon-like smoke spit out from his mouth, and the Navy Vice Admiral's unruly eyes swept around the field. You have 3 minutes to please me. The voice was neither salty nor light, but it was like thunder. The extremely tense atmosphere in the void suddenly broke, and countless angry shouts surged like a rising tide. You are looking for death. You ignorant Navy. What do you think this place is? The pirates roared and fired wildly at Darren. Da 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 da. Countless bullets and artillery were like a large net of gunpowder, instantly covering his figure. Clang clang clang. Boom boom boom. The bullets were bounced away, the shells exploded on the surface of the body, and the smoke rose. The strong wind blew past, and the black smoke dissipated. Darren's figure reappeared unscathed. More than a dozen pirates had already rushed to his side, and surrounded him from all sides at the same time, and all kinds of weapons in their hands fell heavily. A crisp and sharp explosion sounded suddenly, and as sparks flew, long swords, axes, broadswords and even maces broke with a sound. The Den Den Mushi screen in the square clearly showed the pirates' shocked faces in disbelief. Seeing the Vice Admiral with no scratches on his skin, the members of the Big Katakana Middle Mom Pirates could not believe their eyes. This Navy's physical strength. It's exactly like his mother's. I said you were just this strong. Darren stood there as if nothing had happened, sighing helplessly. This is so boring. More than a dozen broken blades of weapons fell in front of him, and a blue arc suddenly flashed between Darren's fingers. Swish. The broken blades shot out instantly, piercing the throats and hearts of the dozen pirates. A large amount of blood sprayed out around Darren's body, and the pirates were shocked and flew backwards, and they died directly. Please give me everything, thank you very much. Chapter 28. Are you worthy of the name of a monster? Drip, drip. The beautiful blood kept falling from the broken blade suspended in the air like a bead curtain. Everyone looked at the scene with a pale face and swallowed their saliva subconsciously. Monster, monster. The attack didn't work at all. The physical strength comparable to my mother. Before the pirates could react, the dazzling arc of electricity bloomed from Darren's body again. It seemed that an invisible position jumped through the void, and those broken blades flew out of the air like sharp arrows again and sank into the crowd of pirates. Swish, swish, swish. The blood rain shot up, and these peripheral members of the big katakana middle-mom pirates didn't react at all. The throat, eyes, heart and other vital parts were directly pierced, and the body shook and fell to the ground. The next moment, the Vice Admiral of the Navy suddenly raised his head, and under his flowing hair, a ferocious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. With a bang, his feet burst out with power, and he shot out from the spot with a roaring momentum like a cannonball. The Vice Admiral of the Navy plunged into the pirates, like a wolf into a flock of sheep, his hands wrapped in armed color domineering turned into sharp dragon claws, and he madly tore the enemies in front of him. A large amount of blood spurted up, and none of the pirates present was a match for him. He crushed the pirates and killed them until blood flowed like a river. Damn it, kill him. He's only one person. Even if we use numbers, we can pile him up to death. Don't be afraid. Facing Darren's fierce attack, the big katakana middle-mom pirates were defeated at first, but they were a large pirate group in the New World. They quickly suppressed their fear and attacked Darren with weapons. At the same time, they quickly dialed the Den Den Mushi communication and quickly summoned other members stationed in various bases on the island to come to support. For a while, the entire Dim Sum Island fell into endless chaos. Countless pirates rushed quickly from various bases on the island to the direction of the expansion town, holding various weapons in their hands and fierce eyes. And the civilians living in the expansion town also fled out of the town in fear, fearing that they would be affected by the aftermath of the battle. The deafening roar continued to sound. Under the broadcast of Den Den Mushi, the whole world was shocked to see the unruly Vice Admiral of the Navy, who was like a mad beast, standing in the frenzy of killing. Buildings collapsed in front of him, pirates were torn to pieces, and the earth could not bear his terrifying inhuman power at all, and kept tearing out terrifying cracks. Dust rolled up. Not enough, far from enough. Kicking the pirate in front of him hundreds of meters away and smashing through more than a dozen buildings, Darren roared with dissatisfaction. 3 half-man-high battle axes fell on his head, but the latter met them without changing his expression. Clang clang clang. The battle axes broke in unison, and the pirates were torn apart by their own power, looking at the Vice Admiral of the Navy who was grinning at them in front of them with horror. Suddenly, the eyes blurred, and 2 big hands suddenly grabbed the heads of 2 of them, and then smashed them hard in the center. With a snap, the heads of several pirates exploded like watermelons at the same time, and red and white splashed all over the ground. It's a flaw. At this moment, a pirate with a hedgehog head jumped up behind Darren and laughed. The long spear in his hand was wrapped with black domineering, and his eyes burst into a fierce look, stabbing Darren's neck fiercely. Dang! Sparks flew everywhere. The pirate's eyes widened. A touch of black appeared on the skin of the Navy Vice Admiral's neck, blocking the shot he stabbed with all his strength. The power is good, but the purity is a little lacking. Darren grinned, turned around, and the moment his left hand grabbed the long spear, his right hand had already stretched out and grabbed the man's head. Amid the latter's screams of fear, he smashed it heavily at his feet. Boom! The ground within 100 meters below collapsed several meters at the same time, and the cracks that kept tearing swallowed up countless buildings and unlucky pirates. The smoke and dust danced, and the ground in front of him suddenly became empty. Darren held the spear tightly, like drawing an arrow from a bow, and threw it heavily. The spear wrapped with armed color domineering instantly penetrated the air, exploding circles of white ripples, and directly penetrated the dozen pirates coming from afar, stabbing them into the ruins of the building in the distance like skewers. Darren's strength has reached the current level, and he is no longer bound by any form. Especially when facing these, small fish, opponents, he can easily take their lives with a gesture. The whole person is like an efficient and precise killing machine, which makes people afraid. Kill. Kill him. However, after a round of fighting, the pirates in front of them did not decrease, but more and more rushed out from all directions of the town. The reinforcements at various bases on the island have completed the encirclement. This situation made countless people who watched it through the video Den Mushi sweat for Darren. But for some reason, the more pirates there were, the more intense and crazy the smile on the face of the Vice Admiral became. It has been a long time since he had such a happy killing. Since he came to the Grand Line, the opponents he has faced along the way have been far stronger than him. He was suppressed and even crushed in every battle, and narrowly escaped death. If it weren't for his strong inhuman body, he would have died countless times. Although the scenes of the weak fighting the strong were quite passionate and exciting, Darren felt a little pent up after being crushed for a long time. This time, he just vented all his anger. Who do you think you are? This is the World Kingdom. At this time, a furious roar suddenly exploded in front of him, like a thunderous roar. The extremely hot air wave rushed towards him, and Charlotte Owen exuded a red air wave all over her body, and her figure fiercely broke through the dust. It's Lord Owen. He's on it. It's stable now. Lord Owen is the monster in our big katakana mom pirates. The frightened pirates around him saw this figure, their faces were overjoyed, and they shouted excitedly. Charlotte Owen roared. Hot wind fist. The suffocating high temperature turned into a substantial orange-red flame, which was wrapped in a spiral and flew around his fist, piercing the air and blasting towards Darren's face. The heat-hot fruit ability user, who can transfer heat to any object he touches to instantly heat the object, has a powerful force that can make the sea boil. Even if Mom wants you, I can't let you do whatever you want. At this moment, his whole body seemed to be burning, and his eyes were emitting substantial flames. Facing the fierce attack, Darren's mouth curled up a grim smile, and under the starting posture of the dragon claw fist, the dark three-fingered dragon claw stretched out without dodging, and met Charlotte Owen's attack head-on. Bang! The three-fingered dragon claw directly clasped Charlotte Owen's fist, and the surging air waves spread out wildly in all directions with the two of them as the center, raising waves on the mottled land. Ha 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 ha! You dare to touch my fist! You really don't know how to live or die. Charlotte Owen laughed. I am the user of the heat-hot fruit. I can boil even the sea, and you, what? The laughter stopped abruptly. Charlotte Owen's eyes widened, and her eyeballs almost popped out. She saw that her amazing heat wave, which was enough to melt buildings, did not even burn the skin of the Vice Admiral. I'm sorry, you are not magma. Darren raised a mocking sneer at the corner of his mouth under Charlotte Owen's eyes. You are worthy of the name of monster. The three-fingered dragon claw twisted hard. Crack. Crack. His whole arm, which was emitting red heat waves, was twisted into a knot. A large amount of blood mist exploded from the bursting skin and muscles, and then evaporated. Physique, strength, speed, recovery, development of devil fruit abilities, use and strength of domineering, combat experience, fighting instinct. These are the most basic entry standards for monsters, just based on one of them. Not to mention that Darren is known for his inhuman physical fitness among monsters. In terms of pure physical strength, there are only a handful of people on this sea who can be compared with him. Although Charlotte Owen is called a monster within the Big Mom Pirates, she is still crushed compared to Darren, who has experienced fighting with countless strong men and received a lot of hellish training. The crackling sound of muscle and bone tearing suddenly sounded, and the bloody, twisted arm looked so shocking under the gaze of people all over the world at this moment. Even many people felt a dull pain in their arms and took a breath of cold air. Damn it! This is the 10,000 Kingdoms. I will never lose to you. Charlotte Owen's lips turned pale with pain, her eyes were bloodshot, and she screamed with her teeth almost broken. What 10,000 Kingdoms, Totland? One day it will raise the flag of justice. Darren sneered mockingly, and the three-fingered dragon claw that grabbed Charlotte Owen's arm suddenly pulled hard. With a tearing sound. A scene that makes people's scalps numb was staged. Charlotte Owen's entire right arm was torn off alive by him. Blood spurted out like a fountain, watering the sky. Charlotte Owen roared in pain, her body thumped. He staggered back. Without any time to catch his breath. Darren's figure came up again and came to him in an instant. He lowered his waist and raised his legs. A powerful knee strike. Bang! Charlotte Owen was severely injured, and her lower abdomen seemed to be hit by a heavy artillery. She bent up, and the violent armed color domineering burst out of his back, blowing the clothes on his upper body into pieces. Blood gushed out of his mouth and nose, his bloodshot eyeballs bulged, and his mouth opened like a fish lacking oxygen. His pupils became dilated. Damn it! Go! Save Lord Owen! At this time, the pirates around him who were horrified finally reacted from the shocking scene just now, roaring and attacking Darren. Various weapons and attacks fell on his head, neck, arms, back and legs, but there was a sharp explosion of metal colliding, and a large number of sparks were splashed. Darren ignored these minions, grabbed Charlotte Owen's weird hair with one hand, and had time to look down at his watch. Well, there are still 15 seconds. The pirates on the island have gathered, and the civilians should have almost escaped. As soon as the voice fell, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Boom! A majestic and boundless terrifying momentum suddenly burst out from his body, and the invisible tide radiated in all directions, sweeping the entire town in an instant. The wind was falling, and the stones were flying. Everything in front of him seemed to have become doomsday, and the world lost all colors. The domineering aura. The pirates were like being struck by lightning, and their bodies were stagnant at the same time. Even many of the weaker ones, under the impact of Darren's domineering aura, their eyes became blurred and they fell to the ground and fainted. Well, it's time to end it. Darren stood on the blood and countless corpses, grabbed Charlotte Owen's neck with one hand, and lifted her high in the air. Blood kept falling from his arms, and under the sunlight, the blood-stained cloak of justice behind him danced. Everything was like purgatory. What do you want to do? Charlotte Owen gasped with a pale face and dying, staring at Darren. His arm was broken, he lost a lot of blood, and his internal organs were seriously injured. His body was on the verge of death. Didn't I say that? Darren raised his head with a cold expression and grinned. Destroy all the pirates on the island. Charlotte Owen was startled, and her tired pupils shrank into pinholes. He suddenly remembered the information about the guy in front of him, and his strange sword. Suddenly, Charlotte Owen subconsciously looked up at the sky, her expression gradually horrified, and she was filled with fear that she couldn't move. He finally understood the logic of the guy's actions. Why did he have such a powerful weapon and deliberately show his figure and land in the expansion town for close combat? This guy wanted to lure all the thousands of big katakana middle-mom pirates stationed in various places on the entire Snack Island into the expansion town, and then wipe them out in one fell swoop. The 3 minutes he mentioned was not the time he needed to kill all the pirates here. It was the time given to the civilians in the expansion town to escape and take refuge. No. After figuring it all out, Charlotte Owen murmured in despair. No. Countless faces flashed through his mind, and he suddenly gritted his teeth and roared, his eyes about to burst. Many of the members stationed on this island are his brothers and sisters. The moment the roar started, the surging heat wave gushed out of Charlotte Owen's body like a fiery red cyclone. He was like a hot spring erupting, and like a huge furnace that melted steel. His whole body was burning, and he opened his arms to Darren with force. And hugged him. This was a blow that burned his life. At this critical moment, he actually wanted to die with Darren to protect the other pirates in the expansion town. A Tommy Manlife furnace. At almost the same time, Darren also gave the last order coldly. Yan Mo, shoot it. Momo 30 times amplification katakana middle. Island fall. The moment the voice sounded. In the eyes of countless viewers around the world who were shocked. Above the sky of the expansion town of Wangguo Snack Island. A huge black light suddenly tore through the thick clouds. Carrying the terrifying kinetic energy that swept everything and tore everything apart. Like a giant sword wielded by a god. It slashed down vertically. The world stopped and was silent for a second. Boom. The screen of the Den Den Mushi was completely occupied by the dazzling white light, which made countless viewers around the world unable to open their eyes. If someone looked from the sky above the island, they could see with horror that the moment the black knife light fell, it radiated out from the position where the knife light fell, and the expansion town within a few kilometers. In an instant, it turned into ruins. I don't know how long it took. It seemed like an extremely long century, and it seemed like a few short seconds. In front of everyone in the world, the Den Den Mushi projection screen showed a picture again. The picture gradually became clear. The specific location was probably a street in Dim Sum Island. From the angle, the town of Expansion in the distance has completely turned into a sea of fire. A large number of buildings collapsed, the earth was torn apart, black smoke rose to the sky, and no one survived. The flames leapt, and the sight was red. In the billowing black smoke, the figure of the Navy Vice Admiral slowly walked out of the ruins of the Sea of Fire. The dark-armed color domineering faded from his body like water, and finally glowed with a fluttering navy cloak, and the blood-red pieces became more holy and white. A huge explosion rose again in the town behind him, the earth shook, and the picture shook. The Navy Vice Admiral casually took out a brand new cigar from his arms, and the explosion behind him flickered, reflecting his figure in constant light and darkness. The cigar was lit, and he took a deep breath. Then he took out a military Den Den Mushi and dialed the signal. "I am Sengoku." A low voice that could not suppress excitement and shock came from the military Den Den Mushi. Darren exhaled a dragon-like smoke from his mouth, turned his back to the town ruins behind him that were constantly exploding in rising pillars of fire, and said lightly, "General Sengoku, I am Vice Admiral Rogers Darren of the Navy Headquarters. As you can see, the mission has been completed, reporting to you." He raised his head and smiled defiantly at the video Den Den Mushi in front of him. The enemy disappeared. The world fell into a dead silence. The Den Den Mushi communication screen connecting the world's major kingdoms, forces, and islands suddenly froze. "I ask for everything, and I am grateful." Chapter 30 Sword of Damocles. The picture on the Den Den Mushi screen was frozen on the defiant smile of the Navy Vice Admiral. At this moment, the whole world fell into endless dead silence. New World, Wano Country. Curry Area, Military Factory Building Belt. In the Japanese-style meeting hall, the members of the Beast's Pirates stared at the frozen Den Den Mushi screen in front of them in amazement, not daring to breathe. Quinn, the epidemic, was so confused that his chin almost dropped to the ground, and he didn't even notice that the cigar burned his mouth. This. He trembled and shivered. The face of Jin, the flame disaster, next to him, was filled with unprecedented solemnity, and the flames burning on the black wings behind him seemed to have dimmed. Kaido, who was originally drunk, had no sign of drunkenness on his face at this time, and sat there in a daze. The atmosphere was extremely depressing and tense. "That, Boss Kaido, Darren, shouldn't know that we are in Wano Country, right?" Quinn suddenly turned his head, looked at Kaido, who was gloomy, with a twitching and funny expression, and asked fearfully. As soon as these words came out, the faces of the core cadres of the Beast's Pirates present all changed drastically. My hair stood on end, and I felt a chill running up my spine, straight up my forehead, and my scalp was numb. Yes. Our boss Kaido was one of the main culprits in the invasion of Marineford. According to the vengeful character of that marine, if he knew that the Beast's Pirates had moved their base to Wano Country, he would definitely take the initiative to come to them for revenge. As for how to retaliate. What a joke, you can figure it out with a little effort. With the terrifying mobility and flying speed of that marine, and the terrifying power of that demon sword, he doesn't need to confront the Beast's Pirates head-on, just throw it down with one sword. It can destroy all the arsenal production lines they have worked so hard to build, turning them into a scorched earth. Big Katakana Middle Mom Pirates, Bankoku Desert Island. The scene they just saw is a living example, right in front of them. Boss Kaido and two other top officers may not be afraid of such a sudden, blitz airstrike, but their minions are afraid. Except for the three of them, who in the Beast's pirates can survive such a disaster-level attack? The most terrifying thing is, with the flying speed, surprise attack capability and insidiousness of that navy, they can't guard against it at all. Maybe one day when they are eating hot pot and singing, a black knife hundreds of meters long will come down from the sky above their heads, kill them directly, and then escape easily. Thinking of this, the whole meeting hall was filled with gurgle sounds, and the pirates couldn't help swallowing their saliva and nervously looking up at the sky, as if there was some kind of terror lurking there. Everyone looked at their boss cautiously. Kaido's face became increasingly livid, and he gritted his teeth and said, "That brat, probably doesn't know. Hey, your tone is too undetermined." Quinn's mouth twitched, and he looked like he was crying. With the strength shown by that Marine, Quinn felt that he was no longer his opponent. If he really came to his door and hated the fact that he had tortured him that day, Quinn was fully confident that he would be the first to suffer. After all, Quinn was confident in his means of torturing people. Jin's face was not much better. Fortunately the mask blocked his face. Damn it! At this time, Kaido seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly roared fiercely, punched the floor, and smashed the floor in the hall into pieces. The violent breath erupted with his rising anger, and the domineering aura of the Overlord surged out. The surrounding pirates were forced to kneel on the ground, and many of them fainted. That bastard Shiki, I was tricked by him. Kaido was so angry that his face turned red, and his chest rose and fell rapidly. Although the invasion of Marineford was very enjoyable, now they have to face the crazy revenge of Darren, the bastard. Always be alert and guard against the possibility of Darren's lightning surprise attack. The most annoying thing is that Shiki is the mastermind and the one who killed the most fiercely in the Navy headquarters, but in the end it was himself and Linling who took the blame. Kaido gnashed his teeth at this time, wishing he could find the Golden Lion and fight him. You know, that cunning bastard Shiki has no fixed territory and power. Even for the Navy and the government with a huge intelligence network, it is difficult to find his trace. Now the first to suffer is Linlin's Wano country. Once the news of Wano country is exposed, maybe the knife will really hang over Wano country next time. Notify that guy Orochi that our plan should be advanced. Kaido's eyes suddenly turned blood red, turned his head and stared at Jin, and said fiercely, "Strengthen the blockade of Wano country to prevent all news from leaking out. Anyone who dares to go out to sea will be killed on the spot." Hearing this, Jin was slightly stunned, knelt on one knee and said, "Yes, Lord Kaido." Under the mask, his eyes flickered with uncertain light. Big Brother Kaido has always been domineering and majestic. Even when facing powerful opponents such as Whitebeard, Golden Lion and even Roger, he laughed generously and calmly. He has never seen Big Brother Kaido show such a fearful expression to someone. Will the arsenal power we have built with great effort in Wano country be destroyed into ruins again? At this moment, such an extremely uneasy thought suddenly emerged in Jin's mind. A certain sea area in the New World. The main ship of the Whitebeard pirates, the Moby Dick. The crew of the Whitebeard pirates stood there in shock, unable to believe their eyes. Kazuki Oden leaned on the railing with a dead look on his face, staring at the frozen Den Den Mushi screen with lifeless eyes. Whitebeard himself also looked ugly, staring at the screen gloomily. What a lunatic! Marco muttered to himself with a pale face. The Admiral's oath to attack the New World finally became a reality at this moment. He has not officially guarded G5 yet, but this sudden blitzkrieg has sounded the death knell for them. Although the members of their main ship are absolutely not afraid of Darren's blitzkrieg, the Whitebeard pirates also have a vast territory under their command. Even if Dad is the strongest man in the world, he alone cannot protect so many territories at the same time. Thinking of this, an uneasy sense of crisis emerged in their hearts. That black demon sword that breaks the sky is like the sword of Damocles in the legend, hanging over the heads of all of them. You don't know when it will fall, but you know it may fall. This unpredictable sense of horror, like the justice of the Navy, is full of mystery, randomness and extreme personal preferences, which makes people nervous. This madman who acts only on personal preferences, arbitrary justice, is the most terrifying. Please thank you for everything. Chapter 31. This has nothing to do with us. East China Sea, Rogue Town. Dim Tavern. Ha 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 ha. So funny. Roger smashed the bottle onto the wooden table with a bang, and laughed out loud. Their pirate group originally just wanted to stay in Rogue Town for a short while and buy daily supplies. Taking advantage of the free time, Roger, who was craving for alcohol, brought his crew to the tavern to drink. But he didn't expect that he would see such a wonderful performance on the tavern screen not long after sitting down. Hey, Captain Roger, don't forget that the Navy is also our enemy. Looking at Roger's shining eyes, someone couldn't help but cover his face and remind him. Roger laughed disapprovingly. So what? This kid is quite interesting. Jabba glanced at Roger and said suddenly. He took off your pants. Roger. Seeing the crew members trying to hold back their laughter and shaking their shoulders, he blushed, slammed the table and glared at Jabba. Didn't I tell you not to mention this again? Ha 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 ha. The crew laughed together. Bucky and Redhead, who were drinking secretly in the corner, looked at each other with lingering fear. The scene of the Navy killing crazily on the screen just now made them unconsciously think of the shadow of that day. They were almost killed. Damn it. Darren, that bastard, is getting stronger and stronger. Barrett raised his head with anger and drank the wine, gulping it down. He thought that after this period of high-frequency sparring with Captain Roger, his strength had improved significantly. But after seeing the hearty massacre on the Den Den Mushi screen, Barrett couldn't help but doubt himself. Others were just watching the fun, but Barrett, as a close combat fanatic and familiar with Darren, saw it more clearly than anyone else. During this raid on the World Snack Island, Darren's amazing the Ghost's mobility and the power of the demon sword are indeed amazing, but what shocked Barrett even more was his close combat. The one-sided attitude crushed him, and his moves were crisp, decisive and ruthless. Putting aside the domineering and devil fruit, Darren's close combat skills have reached perfection. While drinking strong liquor, Barrett repeatedly recalled Darren's fight in his mind, and was surprised to find that if it were him, he might not be able to achieve the smoothness and accuracy of Darren. Don't be discouraged, Barrett. Yes, you are already very strong. When you develop a stronger domineering, you will definitely be able to suppress him. Others smiled and comforted. Looking at the noisy crew, Rayleigh smiled helplessly, shook his head and said, "This Navy's means are really powerful. They actually thought of this way to establish their authority. I guess after this time, if those guys in the New World want to take action against G5, they have to consider the consequences of Darren's revenge." The other members of Roger's pirate group nodded in agreement. The purpose of the admirals doing this is actually very clear. Show your powerful military force in front of the whole world to achieve a deterrent effect. After all, not everyone is like Golden Lion, who has no fixed territory and no weaknesses. People living in this world, even pirates who claim to be free and unrestrained, always have their weaknesses. Family, friends, territory, assets, industry, business. The Admiral sent out a signal, or a warning, for this. If you make me angry, I will destroy everything you cherish by any means. With his powerful mobility and destructive power, he definitely has such ability. The most terrifying thing is that Darren, this Navy kid, is not quite the same as the General Navy. Jabba nodded solemnly in agreement. He does not have a clear boundary between good and evil, and being open and above board is not his motto. He acts more based on his personal preferences, which is the most difficult to deal with. Ha 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 ha, what does this have to do with us? At this time, Roger suddenly opened his arms and stretched his waist. He laughed carelessly and unrestrainedly. We are so poor that we can't even afford to drink. We have no territory or power, so we don't have to be afraid at all. He laughed with his hands on his hips, his face full of pride. Everyone. You also know that we are so poor, and you still bring us to drink. The tavern owner who heard this behind the bar instantly turned green. Similar scenes are constantly staged in major seas and countries in the world. Darren's shocking, Blitz live broadcast, was like a heavy bomb dropped into a calm lake, causing huge waves. The new Vice Admiral Rogers Darren actually has such terrible mobility. Such an important town in the Big Mom Pirates 10,000 nations was easily destroyed by him. Great, does this mean that when pirates plunder in the future, the Navy's support will come faster? Damn it, he is warning us. He is threatening us. Different forces have their own thoughts and discussions. The members of the Allied countries were shocked, while the civilians were more cheering and happy. The pirates were terrified and roared in anger. Marine Headquarters, Marineford. Marshal's office. 5 minutes have passed, but the senior Navy officials are still standing there, with shock on their faces. Zhang put down the military Den Mushi in his hand and stood there motionless, feeling that everything happened so easily, as if it was a dream. Marshal Kong. He subconsciously looked at Kong Gangu, but before he could speak, a messenger rushed in sweating. Report to Marshal Kong. Kongu Kong glanced at him unhappily and said coldly. Didn't I tell you not to disturb me during the meeting? The young messenger panted. I'm sorry, but this is very important. Since 3 minutes ago, our headquarters has been receiving calls from representatives of governments and royal families around the world. These representatives have all expressed their heartfelt congratulations on the success of our graduation ceremony. Hearing this, Kong Gangu, Zhang and others were all stunned. They reacted instantly. These guys who curry favor with the powerful are not congratulating us on the graduation ceremony. If they wanted to congratulate us, they should have called us long ago. The congratulations were sent now, which clearly showed that they had witnessed Darren's ultra-long-range combat capabilities. Thinking of this, everyone looked at each other in surprise. A sneer of contempt appeared on the corner of Sakaski's mouth. At this time, the messenger added. In addition, many members of the Allied countries have expressed their willingness to donate to the Navy headquarters to help the progress of the reconstruction of Marineford. Hearing this, Steel Bone Kong, the eyes of the two of them suddenly lit up. Please, thank you for everything. Chapter 32, An Unexpected Surprise. Donation. What donation? Zhang Guo said impatiently, staring at the messenger with burning eyes. But as soon as he said it, he realized that he was overreacting. Facing the messenger's strange expression and the half-smile of others, Zhang Guo coughed twice to cover up his embarrassment, and suddenly said in a serious tone. Well, donation, right. The members of the Allied countries are too polite. The work of rebuilding Marineford should be an internal affair of the Navy. It is not appropriate to rashly accept donations from members of the Allied countries. Seeing Zhang Guo's reserved attitude, Suru rolled his eyes, and Zepha's mouth twitched. The messenger nodded with sudden enlightenment and sighed. So that's it. General Zhang Guo is really a role model for our Navy. I will refuse them right away. As he said that, he turned and walked out the door. Wait. Zhang Guo's face changed and he blurted out. Ahem, but speaking of this, since it is the goodwill of the members of the member states, we can't just refuse it casually. Isn't that right, Marshal Kong? He looked at Kong with a slightly embarrassed expression. Kong's mouth twitched and he turned his face away. Zhang Guo. Everyone. Just as Zhang Guo was discussing how to maintain the dignity and reserve of the Navy and take the military aid from the member states, Darren was. Snack Island. Darren put away the video Den Mushi wearing windproof goggles, and with a casual move, the demon sword Yanmo turned into a black light and flew back. Just as he was about to embark on the return journey, Darren suddenly frowned, and the corners of his mouth gradually raised a smile of interest. I thought it would be Lingling who came to see me, but it was you. He turned around slowly and looked at the ruined town of Swelling in the distance. On the charred ruins, a tall and straight figure loomed in the billowing black smoke. You destroyed Swelling Town and killed so many of my brothers, and you still want to leave alive. Amidst the dull footsteps, a pair of black riding boots with spikes first emerged from the black smoke. Then came a pair of slender legs in black leather pants. The naked upper body was muscular and branded with blood-red tattoos. Dark red short hair and a wide scarf covering the lower half of the face. Indescribable anger and murderous intent gushed out of the bloodshot eyes, staring at Darren. The young man held the trident in one hand and walked slowly out of the sea of fire, with a solemn and powerful momentum rushing towards him. "Are you sure you can keep me here, big katakana middle dot mom pirates, Vice Captain?" Charlotte Katakuri. Darren said with a half-smile, but a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. If that crazy woman big katakana middle dot mom didn't come, he wouldn't mind fighting Katakuri. He didn't forget. This guy in front of him with extraordinary momentum is the master, second only to Kaido in the ranking list. This freak who has almost no shortcomings in the original plot and even cultivates his observation haki to the level of predicting the future may help him practice. After all, his observation haki has just awakened not long ago, which is the weakest shortcoming of all abilities. I just don't know if Katakuri, who looks only about 20 years old now, has cultivated his observation haki to the level of predicting the future. This is not a question of whether it can be determined. Charlotte Katakuri suddenly raised her head, her eyes bursting with astonishing murderous intent, and she tightly grasped the trident in her hand. Took a step forward. Bang! The air exploded, and the trident, Earth Dragon, was thrown out by Katakuri and shot towards Darren. "I must kill you. I will use your body to commemorate my brother." Driven by the burst of superhuman power, the trident broke through the air, and the speed was so fast that it even blew up circles of waves in the air. In a flash, it was infinitely close. Zzzzzzzzz. Strands of blue electric current flowed out on the surface of Darren's body and disappeared into the void. With a bang. The trident seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier, and it hovered 5 centimeters in front of Darren's eyes. The violent airflow it brought with it made Darren's hair and cloak fly in disorder, and rolled up a large amount of dust. Electricity flowed out on the surface of the trident, and its tail swayed constantly. A sly smile suddenly rose on the corner of the Admiral's mouth. "It's really worthy of the blood of that crazy woman Ling Ling. You can achieve this level with just physical strength. But if you only have this level, you want to avenge your brothers, you are still far away." "Shut up." As if stimulated by this sentence, Katakuri shouted coldly, and his figure disappeared from the spot with a whoosh. The next moment, he had appeared in front of Darren, and his fist wrapped in black and red armed color domineering aura was blasted towards Darren's face with great force. Darren grinned and punched without giving in. Bang! The two men maintained their strong fist-shaking posture, and their two dark fists collided in the air like meteors, erupting an extremely fierce storm. Countless purple-red lightning spread out around the two men, and large areas of cracks and collapse appeared on the ground. The purgatory-like strong wind swept across a radius of several kilometers. Overlord Calora domineering collision. Crack! A slight bone-breaking sound suddenly came from Katakuri's arm. He couldn't help but groan, took a step back with his right foot, and a solemn look flashed in his eyes. This guy's power is too terrifying. It's like facing the oppression of my mother. You want to kill me, this is not enough, Katakuri. Darren grinned. Damn it. Katakuri cursed inwardly, his eyes suddenly condensed. He grabbed the trident Earth Dragon hovering in the air with one hand, and his entire right arm instantly turned into a white glutinous ball, wrapped around the gun body of the trident, and stabbed towards Darren's abdomen. The glutinous ball twisted and rotated rapidly, and the whole trident spiraled through the air like a dragon. Glutinous ball stabs. Darren stretched out his left hand without changing his expression. The three-finger dragon claws were all dyed black, and he used the dragon claw fist to perfection, directly grabbing the high-speed rotating trident. Clang clang clang. The sharp sound of metal friction sounded, and a large number of sparks illuminated Katakuri's murderous face and the playful smile on the corner of the mouth of the Vice Admiral of the Navy. It's really a bit disappointing. Darren's right hand suddenly grabbed Katakuri's face, but the touch was not warm flesh and blood, but sticky glutinous balls. Half of Katakuri's face turned into a wriggling glutinous ball, and the only remaining eyes were surging with strange red light. This is... Darren frowned at first, and then seemed to think of something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. The future predicting observation haki. He used the perception of observation haki to change his body shape into a glutinous ball in advance, forming an effect similar to the natural elementalization. Ask for everything, thank you very much. Chapter 33, Training. A flash of joy suddenly flashed through Darren's eyes, and he laughed with his eyes shining. You actually practiced your observation hockey to the level of predicting the future. Ha ha ha, at this age, you are worthy of being the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family. Katakuri was stunned when he heard this, and his pupils shrank slightly. He looked at the undisguised excitement on Darren's face, and suddenly a strange chill arose in his heart. This lunatic. If his opponent used a more powerful ability, wouldn't the reaction of a normal person be shock or nervous? But what's wrong with this guy? He got excited instead. In that case, I won't be polite. Darren laughed happily, took a step forward, and inhuman power surged from his feet, and suddenly punched along the tense spine. His eyes were extremely focused, and his mind and body skills seemed to be completely integrated at this moment. A serious punch. A sound of breaking through the air suddenly arose, and the dark fist rapidly enlarged in Katakuri's pupils at an unimaginable speed. Something is wrong. Facing this terrifying punch, he seemed to feel that all the surroundings in front of him were fading and disappearing like a tide in his eyes. The pores all over his body stood up, and this punch actually gave Katakuri an extremely strange and grand and domineering feeling, as if even a towering mountain would be smashed to pieces by this punch. The future-predicting observation hockey was instantly activated, and wisps of strange red light surged in the depths of his pupils, but Katakuri was horrified to find that in those short dozens of futures, he could not avoid this punch. There is no escape. What is this trick? His spirit has completely locked onto my breath. Single quote. Katakuri roared in his heart, and made a decision in an instant. His eyes suddenly became tenacious and tough. His arms suddenly swelled into a large ball of glutinous rice cakes, which gathered into strips of rice cakes, and hit Darren's punch. Horned rice cake. The black and red armed color domineering seemed to bloom in the form of lightning on the rice cake fist, and the fist collided heavily with terrifying power. Boom. The surging hurricane spread outward with the two people as the center, lifting up a large area of land and building debris. Katakuri groaned, a dazzling blood mark oozed from the corner of his mouth, and his body flew backwards for dozens of meters. His figure quickly adjusted his posture in midair, and his melted face returned to normal again. He raised his right hand and transformed it into a heavy machine gun driven by his ability. The black domineering aura covered it, and the machine gun rotated at high speed, madly spraying bullets covered with domineering aura, covering Darren. Unparalleled rice cake blade bullet. Darren frowned. When his melee power was crushed, did he decide to keep his distance? As his mind raced, he instantly realized Katakuri's intention. The sight of the color of domineering and the perception of the biomagnetic field unfolded at the same time, and a wisp of cold light like a blue electric current flashed through the depths of the eyes of the Vice Admiral of the Navy. His figure suddenly became blurred, and the speed was so fast that even afterimages appeared. Bang 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 bang. The heavy rain of glutinous rice balls continued to penetrate Darren's afterimage, splashing on the ground and the walls of the building, and shooting through craters one by one. The bullets of Katakuri's machine gun were not metal, but glutinous rice balls wrapped with domineering, and Darren could not use the magnetic field to exert influence. The sound of bullets shooting continued to ring. Katakuri landed dangerously, his waist arched back, gritting his teeth to avoid falling on his back, and his spiked boots plowed two long grooves on the ground. With a bang, he stepped back with his right foot, leaving a shocking deep pit on the ground, and then stabilized his figure. He took a deep breath, and at the moment when his eyes were red, he predicted the future landing point of Darren's high-speed dodge. He gritted his teeth and took a half step, and his right arm turned into a huge rice cake again, and shouted loudly. Swish! The friction between the highly compressed rice cake and the domineering gave rise to a fiery red flame. The rice cake arm burning with high-temperature flames ejected like a rocket launcher, dragging a gorgeous flame tail, and shot towards a certain position. Baked rice cakes. A strange scene appeared. Just when the burning rice cake rocket was about to fall into the ground, Darren's figure suddenly appeared at the point where the burning rice cake fell. It looked very coincidental, as if Darren deliberately appeared at that position to face Katakori's attack. If it weren't for the brief surprise on Darren's face, others who saw this scene might have thought that the two of them had rehearsed it deliberately. Predict the future. The hot-baked rice cake rocket was approaching, and Darren had such a thought in his mind. This is the horror of predicting the future. Predicting the enemy's movements in the future is unprepared. At this moment, the hair stood up, but Darren's eyes burst out with a fiery fighting spirit. There was no time to adjust his thoughts, but his fighting instincts over the years had already reacted subconsciously. The opening move of the Dragon Claw fist was performed skillfully. The three-finger Dragon Claw tore the air into visible white ripples and grabbed the hot roasted rice cake directly. Boom! The powerful propulsion made Darren slide back more than 10 meters, and his body remained standing and crashed through 2 buildings. I told you, this temperature is useless. Darren raised his head and grinned, and the armed color domineering in the Dragon Claw burst out a second impact. The roasted rice cake in front of him instantly exploded into a burning glutinous ball. In the swaying black smoke, the figure of Katakori, with blood oozing from the corner of his mouth, rushed out coldly. His right arm has been filled with glutinous balls again, and his hands have turned into glutinous balls, wrapped with domineering and stretched out, covering Darren like a storm. Mingli rice cake. The shadow of the fist filled the sky, as fast as a machine gun, occupying all of Darren's vision, airtight. At the same time, Katakori drove his observation hockey to the extreme, predicting Darren's moves and landing points to achieve the effect of suppression. Darren punched and attacked without retreating. The fists in the sky kept colliding, bursting out dull vibrations and sparks, and circles of violent air waves continued to derive with the collision of fists. Because of being suppressed by observation hockey, Darren would be hit by Katakori's tricky fists from time to time, but his body did not move and took the attack hard, and blood gradually seeped from the corners of his mouth. Seeing this scene, Katakori's eyes lit up. It works. Although this guy's physical strength and power are terrifying, and his close combat skills are also extremely dangerous, his hard power is enough to easily suppress himself. But relying on his observation hockey, he is not completely powerless. However, what he did not notice is that the Vice Admiral of the Navy, who was covered by the fist shadows in the sky, raised a barely visible smile at the corner of his mouth. Because when he tried to concentrate on dealing with and avoiding Katakori's punch, he could clearly sense the following scene on his attribute panel. Observation hockey plus 0.03. Observation hockey plus 0.04. Observation hockey plus 0.03. Observation hockey. Ask for everything, grateful. Chapter 34 Double Happiness. The strength of his own observation hockey is rising madly at an unprecedented speed. He is indeed a famous teacher, of at least T1 level. Darren has only experienced this kind of teaching quality in the hands of Fatty Quinn. Bang! A heavy rice cake fist hit Darren's face unexpectedly, and while his skin and muscles were rippling, his head shook to one side, and bruises and blood oozed out of the surface of his skin. Darren's eyes were brighter than ever, and the smile on his mouth became more intense. Observation hockey has always been his shortcoming. Because he relied too much on physical defense and magnetic field perception, Darren was slow to develop and practice observation hockey. After Zeph's cruel special training, he was tortured to death in seastone shackles, and finally successfully awakened observation hockey with great difficulty. It can be seen that the strength and level of observation hockey have not been raised. Even if Darren trained hard, the effect was not obvious. But now, Darren finally experienced the pain and happiness he felt in the prison of the Beast's pirates that day. Adapt. That's right, Darren was not passively beaten, otherwise it would be too child's play. Through the confrontation and collision with Katakori, Darren constantly imitated and adapted to the former's way and feeling of displaying observation hockey, forcing his body to adapt to his speed. Gradually, facing the terrifying fist shadows pouring down from the sky, Darren has gradually explored more and more clearly, and seen more clearly. The surging in his eyes, the red light was getting stronger and stronger. At the same time, Katakuri gradually realized that something was wrong. As time went by, he was shocked to find that the efficiency and speed of the guy in front of him in dodging his attacks, his nerve reactions, etc., were obviously improving. If at the beginning, his fists could hit him 5 out of 10, then in less than a minute, the frequency of hitting this guy has decreased a lot. It was already very good to hit him 2 out of 10. Suddenly, a terrifying thought quickly popped up in Katakuri's mind. This guy's observation haki is getting stronger and stronger. But how is this possible? Katakuri gritted his teeth and roared, and the speed of his fists suddenly increased. The rain poured down in an instant, and the fists wrapped in haki were like heavy clouds, covering Darren's head. Don't underestimate your potential, Katakuri. Darren grinned, revealing his teeth stained with blood. Facing the rain-like fist shadows, a strange red light suddenly flashed in the depths of his pupils. The strength of the observation haki. 60 points. Even Darren himself did not expect that the strength of the observation haki, which was originally the weakest shortcoming, actually surpassed the strength of the armed haki and took the lead in crossing the 60-point threshold. Everything in front of him seemed to become extremely slow at this moment. At this moment, all the sounds around him kept moving away, and his brain was clear and clear. The picture was like a slow-motion movie, appearing frame by frame in front of him. The supreme silence occupied Darren's mind, making his thinking clear and indifferent. Swish. Taking a step, Darren's figure disappeared from the spot like a ghost. It was as if a blue arc flashed in the void, and in a moment the figure of the Vice Admiral of the Navy fiercely broke through the fist shadows in the sky and came to Katakuri's side. The strong thigh muscles stretched the military trousers tight, like a sharp iron whip. With a terrifying sound of breaking through the air, a side kick attacked Katakuri's abdomen. Bang! Katakuri crossed his hands and stood in front of him, blocking Darren's kick. The air waves surged out, and under the unparalleled power, Katakuri felt as if he was hit head-on by a high-speed warship. He vomited a pool of blood and flew backwards from the spot. Boom! He crashed through a building. Boom! He crashed through another building. Boom! On the high-speed flight path, Katakuri crashed into more than a dozen buildings before sinking deeply into the ruins of the distant expansion town like a cannonball, exploding a huge mud wave hundreds of meters high. The land of the island wailed under the heavy load, and the gravel on the ground jumped up. Is he dead? Darren landed steadily, raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, and narrowed his eyes. There was a breakthrough in his observation haki. Just now, he was in a good mood and subconsciously used all his strength. Katakuri's teaching effect was too amazing. He didn't want to kill him so quickly. Such a master is not easy to find. Of course, one is enough. The teaching quality of Kaido and Big Katakana Middle Mom is also very good, but compared with the teaching effect, their fists are harder. Fighting with them is no joke. If you are not careful, you will be killed directly. How can you have too much thought and energy to imitate and adapt? But Katakuri is different. Although Katakuri, who is only about 20 years old now, has successfully practiced his observation haki to the realm of predicting the future, in terms of overall hard power, he is far from reaching the peak level in the original plot. Katakuri of this strength is just right, in a position that Darren can easily suppress and control, but not too weak to affect the quality of teaching. Darren is reluctant to let go of such an excellent master and sparring partner. You have to be careful to let the long line catch the big fish when harvesting leeks. The teaching of observation haki has just reached the 60-point mark, and there is still a lot of room for improvement. Compared to someone who can predict the future after half a day of teaching, this is already at turtle speed. Impossible. How could I lose to you like this? At this time, Katakuri's extremely hoarse voice came from the ruins. A bloody hand suddenly rested on the collapsed gray-black building wreckage. Katakuri coughed violently, stood up tremblingly, supported his knees with one hand, and gasped for breath. The wide scarf covering his face has disappeared, revealing his terrifying face that is as ferocious as a demon and protruding sharp teeth. The bloodshot eyes stared at Darren, full of pain and self-blame. I swore to protect my brothers and sisters. He raised his head suddenly. "No matter what, I must kill you and avenge them." After the words fell, he roared at the top of his lungs. The environment of the entire ruins of the expanding town changed dramatically in an instant. The charred earth, collapsed buildings, dilapidated walls, broken trees. All dead things were gone. As if it had come alive, at this moment, it turned into a twisted and wriggling white glutinous ball, surging like a raging tide, surging under Katakori's feet and behind him. The awakening of the devil fruit ability. Darren was stunned at first, and then he was overjoyed again. The course of observation hockey has not yet ended, and the development course of the devil fruit has come. Double happiness is coming. Please everything, thank you very much. Chapter 35 A Hearty Battle. There is such a good thing. Katakori actually cultivated his observation hockey to the level of predicting the future at such a young age, and also developed his own devil fruit ability to the awakening level. This talent is too terrifying. When a person develops his own devil fruit to the extreme, there is a level of awakening. As far as Darren knows, specifically for the three major devil fruit systems, the effects brought by the awakening level are also different. The awakening of the animal-type devil fruit user will give the user an unimaginable recovery ability, and he will be able to recover in a very short time as long as the injury is not fatal. The awakening of the natural type has not yet been reflected in the original plot, but according to the fierce battle between Kuzan and Sakazuki and Punk Hazard after the war to compete for the position of the Navy Admiral, the climate of that island was completely changed. Darren judged that the awakening of the natural type may affect the climate. As for the awakening of the superhuman type, it will give the devil fruit user the ability to change, influence or even assimilate the external environment. Katakori in front of him is the best example. The environment around his body at this moment has changed into the shape of a sticky ball, which he can control at will. However, Katakori is only 20 years old now. Darren was a little unresponsive at this time. Is this the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family? Or, Katakori broke through in the battle with himself and awakened his own devil fruit ability. So, I have become a famous teacher, without knowing it. This is not right. No, it's impossible. Darren quickly made a judgment and shook his head. He narrowed his eyes and observed Katakori's current state, as well as the changes in the surrounding environment after his mochi fruit awakened, and soon came to a conclusion. Katakori's awakening ability has been mastered quite well, and it is definitely not the first time. So, this guy's talent is indeed a bit scary. Get ready to repent, you bastard. Just as Darren was thinking, Katakori had already launched an attack directly. He roared, raised his right hand, and then pressed it heavily on the ground. The ground in front of him suddenly raised waves. Flowing glutinous balls. The surging and sticky white glutinous balls swept towards Darren like waves, and all the buildings, streetlights and house debris on the streets were swallowed by the glutinous balls, as if they had fallen into a huge white swamp and could never escape. The white wave came in an instant, Darren's eyes flashed, and his body flew up directly from the spot, like a flying butterfly moving left and right, flexibly avoiding the surging waves of glutinous rice balls. At the same time, he kept analyzing Katakori's attack rhythm and breath, trying to learn some application skills about the devil fruit ability from it. Both his own magnetic fruit and Katakori's glutinous rice fruit belong to the Superman series. Although the specific manifestations are different, there may be references in development. The most important thing is that Darren's devil fruit development has been stuck at 83 points for a long time. Through the fight with Katakori, even if it is improved by a little or two, it is definitely a big profit. Seeing Darren's actions, Katakori's eyes flashed a red light. Both hands turned into glutinous rice balls at the same time and plunged heavily into the ground. With a swish, the ground in front of him instantly bulged into dozens of rice cake strips, like a machine gun, shooting towards Darren in the air. Raining glutinous rice. Under the perception of the future observation hockey, Katakori's attack was like a rain curtain, completely blocking all of Darren's evasive space. What a good tactic. Darren sensed Katakori's intention and praised him generously, with blue arcs flashing between his fingers. Two sharp phantom lights, one black and one white, whizzed past, tearing through the rain curtain of rice cakes in a devastating manner, and then attacked Katakuri with unabated momentum. The 21st level Great Sword, Yanma. The 50 level Good Sword, Huo Hai. Under Darren's magnetic control, the two extremely sharp swords were swift and flexible, like a sharp thread threading a needle, spiraling around each other. The violent propulsion burst out circles of white air waves. So fast. Katakuri's bloodshot pupils suddenly contracted. In the future, he could foresee, facing the lightning speed of these two knives, if he wanted to dodge, he would definitely be cut in half and pierced through the heart. No way to dodge. Only to take it head on. Thinking through it, Katakuri made a choice without hesitation, with amazing fighting spirit in his eyes. The blast of air rushed towards him, and he clenched his fists and raised them, making a boxer-like attacking posture. The ground behind him suddenly changed, and two huge white glutinous balls rose up. Unparalleled sweet donuts. The moment he took a step forward, the huge glutinous rice balls formed two fists of astonishing size, covered with shiny black armed color domineering. Punch. Katakuri punched in the air. As he moved, the fists formed by the glutinous rice balls behind him made the same fist-punching gesture. Super strength rice cake. Clang, clang. The two fists hit Darren's double swords head-on, and a large number of sparks splashed out. At the same time, the collision of domineering auras erupted into a terrifying storm. Boom. The ground within a kilometer radius suddenly collapsed, tearing open more than a dozen bottomless cracks, and smoke and mud rushed into the sky. The glutinous rice balls chanted. After the attack, Katakuri gritted his teeth and attacked again. The two fists were like a boxer's airstrike training, hitting at a terrifying speed with afterimages. Donut suddenly showed the same attack posture, and the rain of fists that was several times more fierce than before suddenly enveloped the figure of the Navy Vice Admiral. Ha 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 ha. Come on. Facing Katakuri, whose strength has risen sharply, Darren's smile is more cheerful, and even faintly crazy. The observation haki has been pushed to the extreme, combined with the ability to perceive the biological magnetic field. The two are integrated with each other, representing the red of the observation haki and the blue of the magnetic perception. Finally, Darren's pupils are surging with purple electric light. Facing the fists in the sky, he met them fiercely. Fists clashed. Boom 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 boom. A hearty fight. Observation haki plus 0.05. Observation haki plus 0.07. Observation haki plus 0.06. What Darren himself didn't realize was that, unknowingly, his observation haki strength had risen to 70 points. And when observation haki reached 70 points, a special entry gradually emerged. Observation haki, 70 magnetic field induction. I went out to do something today, so I updated late, sorry. There will be another chapter later, but it's too late. Chapter 36 I am the greatest masterpiece. Bang, bang, bang. The sound like muffled thunder continued to explode in the air, and the roaring air waves set off huge waves. Facing Katakuri's violent attack, Darren's figure was directly shrouded by the fist shadow. From a distance, he looked like a small boat swaying in the wind and rain, and could be swallowed up by this majestic attack at any time. Bang! A sticky fist wrapped in armed color domineering hit Darren's left face, and a trace of blood splashed at the corner of his mouth. Bang! Another sticky fist hit Darren's abdomen, causing blood to ooze from his mouth and nose. Katakuri's strengths are perverted observation color domineering and devil fruit development. He has even barely squeezed into the ranks of gold medalists in these two aspects. But because of his age, his hard power is far inferior to Darren, and he is far from reaching the peak level in the later generations. His physical strength, power, explosive power, and even the strength of his armament haki, still remained at the level of a second-tier or even third-tier, silver medal player. This was also the reason why he did not dare to engage in close combat with Darren. Because once he got close, he would be easily suppressed by Darren. So he could only rely on his observation haki and the awakening of his devil fruit ability to consume it at a high frequency through long-range attacks. At the same time, with his observation haki suppressed, Darren could not completely take Katakori's punches like a storm, and could only barely avoid being hit by his vitals. He could only rely on his terrifying physical defense to resist the attacks that he could not dodge. While blood flowers continued to bloom on his body, the purple electric light in his eyes became more and more violent, the smile on his mouth became more and more crazy, and the strength of his observation haki was also rising wildly at an unprecedented speed. Yes, that's the feeling. This kind of hearty feeling. He could clearly feel that his body was quickly adapting to Katakori's attack rhythm. Nerve reactions, body feedback, and even the perception of breath and energy are becoming more and more acute. It's getting clearer and clearer. I can see it. Darren laughed and punched wildly. The power and domineering of each punch created a crushing posture, smashing the oncoming sticky fists. Such a situation gradually gave Katakori a bad premonition in his heart, and his expression gradually became horrified. This guy is actually adapting to his offensive quickly. How is this possible? Katakori is the strongest warrior in the Big Mom Pirates after Charlotte Linlin. He fought in the sea under the banner of Big Mom and killed countless strong men. But he has never seen such a freak. Is there really a monster on this sea that can compare with his mother? Looking at the Vice Admiral who seemed to be shaky under the attack but was actually as solid as a rock, Katakori felt powerless for the first time. That deep feeling of powerlessness made him feel as if he was facing his own mother. His will seemed to be shaken at this moment. Katakori's attack, there was also a delay. Is this guy shaken? Of course, Darren noticed Katakori's abnormality at the first time and couldn't help frowning. Is such a high quality teaching over? He clearly felt that as Katakori's offensive slowed down, the increase in the strength of his observation haki also tended to stagnate. This won't do. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity can't end like this. So he laughed decisively and sarcastically, laughing loudly with blood in his mouth. So this is your level, Katakori. This really disappoints me. With your strength, you are not qualified to say such big words as, help your brothers, to take revenge. Ha 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 ha. Darren's words really hurt Katakori deeply. Shut up. I will definitely kill you today. Katakori's eyes were filled with dense bloodshot, and he gritted his teeth and burst out a stronger breath, and the attack was fierce again. The strength of the observation haki has risen again. It is indeed the case. Darren was overjoyed, and the mockery on his face became more intense. Ha 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 ha. Not enough, not enough. This sea praises you as the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family, and your brothers and sisters all admire you as the most perfect brother. But is this how you act as a brother? You want to protect them. Stop kidding. Look at what you have protected. You can't protect anything. Well, although such words are usually said by villains, I am the biggest scum of the Navy. Darren spoke these, flag-raising, villain jargons calmly, and he was familiar with it. Sure enough. Katakori, who was stimulated by Darren and became more and more furious, had his eyes bulging, and his ferocious teeth looked more and more scary. The offensive surged again. However, to Darren's surprise, as time went by, he found that the speed of his observation haki's improvement was slowing down. It may be that Katakori is not strong enough, or my observation haki has become stronger, so the pressure he brings to me has also decreased. Well, of course it is also possible that after the foundation of observation haki has been improved, the speed of further improvement has slowed down. Just like other abilities, the later it is, the harder it is to improve. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant, and Darren decided to add the last fuel to Katakori's fire. Not enough. Darren sneered wantonly and wildly. I understand. I finally know why Lingling wants to find me as a husband. He stared at the furious Katakori with a face full of playfulness and disdain. She dislikes you for being too weak, Katakori, so she wants to give birth to a stronger son to replace you. This sentence, like an invisible sword, directly tore the remaining calmness in Katakori's heart apart. Impossible. His eyes turned blood red instantly, and he roared with eyes about to burst. Shut up. Mom trusts me. Mom has always relied on me the most. No one can change this fact. Katakuri suddenly jumped out and roared. I am the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family. He was anxious. Feeling Katakuri's growing momentum, Darren's eyes suddenly lit up and laughed. Really? But Lingling doesn't think so. In order to get me, she is willing to cooperate with Golden Lion and Kaido and invade Marineford. What else did she do for you? Ha 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 ha, I killed several of her sons, and I guess she would just smile and say, it's okay. And if I'm not mistaken, she should let you call me, father, right? Please ask for everything, thank you very much. Chapter 37 Be my son, Katakuri. This sentence was like a thunderbolt in a dry land, instantly piercing Katakuri's sensitive heart and soul. The few words Darren said before had already hurt his self-esteem and pride. Because of Big Katakana Mom's own personality, she was seriously absent from the huge family of the Charlotte family, and did not take the responsibility of educating her children as a mother. Therefore, Katakuri has been placed with high hopes since he was a child, shouldering the responsibility of being a brother, and protecting his younger brothers and sisters in his own way. He is the most perfect brother, in the eyes of many brothers and sisters of the Charlotte family, an invincible god of war who will never fall on his back, and the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family. To a certain extent, Charlotte Katakuri is not only an excellent brother in the Big Katakana Mom pirates, but also fills part of the responsibility of Big Katakana Mom's absence and plays the role of a father. This situation caused Katakuri to bear too much. On the one hand, he is in awe and worships his mother, and as a son, he craves the latter's trust and reliance. On the other hand, under the admiration of his younger brothers and sisters, he has to create a strong brother persona for 10 years. These two completely different roles make Katakuri's life full of contradictions. And Charlotte Linlin's desire to get Darren an even sacrifice several sons for him makes Katakuri extremely disappointed and also hurts him. It hurt his heart and made him feel a sense of crisis he had never felt before. He was able to become the perfect brother in the eyes of many younger brothers and sisters, and was called the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family, because of his strong strength and outstanding talent. But what if Mom really gave birth to a child with Darren? How terrifying talent and potential will the child who inherited the monster genes of both of them have? At that time, Mom will focus all her attention on this child. And if, no, not if, it is very likely. When this child grows up, he will definitely be stronger than himself. At that time, will his brothers and sisters transfer the trust and respect that they originally projected on him to that child? Darren's child will take away everything that is most important in his life. He will take away his mother's attention and love, the love and trust of his brothers and sisters, and even his title of the highest masterpiece. Thinking of this, Katakuri felt that he could not control his emotions and body. A kind of incapacitating fear began to flow in his heart. And the last words of that damned admiral were a fatal blow. At this moment, the reluctance, anger, pain, hatred and fear in his heart were completely ignited and erupted like a volcano ready to erupt. Shut up. You can't be my father. No matter what. It's impossible. Katakuri roared with his eyes about to burst, and the blood oozing from his mouth dyed his sharp teeth red, looking like a madman. At the moment the roar exploded, a fierce aura that was a bit more violent than before suddenly erupted from his body, sweeping up a lightning storm. Darren was obviously stunned for a moment. This guy's domineering aura has become stronger. According to the collision of Conqueror Haki at the beginning, Darren estimated that Katakuri was much weaker than his own 59-point strength, probably about 30 points. But now the momentum released by Katakuri is at least 40 points. Good guy, you are also the protagonist, right? Or is it that my villain jargon is too effective and stimulated Katakuri to explode? Is it really a talent of famous teacher? This villain is really exciting. This conclusion made Darren laugh and cry. But the fighting spirit in his eyes continued to increase, surging like wildfire. According to the rules summarized above, the stronger Katakuri becomes, the greater the pressure he creates for himself. The greater the pressure of life and death, the higher the teaching quality will be, and the faster his strength can be improved. Darren laughed and greeted him. The fists of the two collided like meteors. Bang! The overwhelming air waves spread like a riot, large tracts of land and boulders were overturned and blown away, and the wreckage of buildings was torn into powder in midair. Under the collision of the conqueror's hockey, large purple and red lightnings emerged in the void, constantly appearing and disappearing, tearing the earth apart. Feeling his own stagnant observation hockey, and even his armament hockey, strength and speed all showing an upward trend again, Darren became more and more excited, and continued to output mercilessly. Ha ha ha, now it's starting to get interesting, Katakuri. I didn't expect that this is what you fear the most. Are you so unwilling to call me father? He smashed the huge fist made by the donut into pieces with one punch, and it turned into a liquid glutinous ball and splashed out. Under the heavy reaction force, Darren's figure slid back, and while standing firm, he looked at Katakuri, whose eyes were as fierce as a devil, and made a move. He looked down at the panting Katakuri, stretched out his right hand, and a smile that he thought was kind, gentle, and domineering, appeared on his face. Whitebeard's smile. Then he said that classic quote. "Be my son, Katakuri." Katakuri was struck by lightning. His face turned pale in an instant, and dense and hideous bloodshot filled his pupils. "You were looking for death." Boom. A deeper and more violent aura vented from Katakuri's body, like a substantial storm, sweeping over Darren. In his perception, Katakuri's domineering aura strength at this time actually rose again. 40, 42, 44. It climbed to 45 points before stopping. Looking at Katakuri's crazy look, even his eyeballs and nostrils were oozing out terrible bloodstains, and the veins on his forehead were bulging and twitching like earthworms. If this was a game, Darren could even imagine that the game panel gave him a prompt sound. Your attack caused a lot of real damage to the enemy. The effect is outstanding. Hit the vital point. Hey, could it be that he couldn't bear the stimulation and burst of blood vessel directly? It really deserves to be by classic quotes from Huzi, this real damage is too outrageous. Darren thought in his heart. Just when Darren's thoughts were flying, Katakuri had already rushed out from the spot with an uncontrollable roar. His posture was no longer brave and calm, but replaced by a kind of madness of a beast in despair. Big brothers, please click to urge for more updates, watch the ads, thank you very much. Chapter 38 I Can't Bear It. If Katakuri's usual fighting style is open and above board, like an agile and powerful cheetah, hunting prey in an orderly, precise and efficient manner, then at this moment, his state has changed greatly. The bloodshot eyeballs are full of dense bloodshot, and he has completely given up defense, exuding a crazy killing intent. At this moment, he has only one goal. Tear up the navy in front of him who calls himself his father. Die. Katakuri's eyes were red, and he took a step forward. The figure disappeared in an instant, as fast as lightning, and teleported to Darren's sky like a ghost. Super strong rice cake. Air attack punch. The unparalleled donut instantly condensed into a huge glutinous fist, which was covered with the armed color domineering and showed an extremely solid and cold black color, falling heavily like a meteorite. The majestic strong wind rolled down from the sky above his head, and the terrifying power it carried had already cracked the ground under his feet. A wanton smile appeared at the corner of Darren's mouth. The purple electric light suddenly bloomed in his pupils. After the observation color domineering reached 70 points, combined with the perception of the biological magnetic field, the new ability, magnetic field induction, derived was actually similar to the amplification effect of the observation color domineering combined with the thunder fruit. Through the perception of electromagnetic waves, the perception range and accuracy of the observation color domineering are enhanced. However, compared to the thunder fruit's main function of increasing the range of perception, Darren's magnet fruit focuses more on enhancing the accuracy of his observation hockey perception. If we have to make an analogy, then the 70-point observation hockey strength has reached at least 80 points of accuracy under the amplification and enhancement of the magnet fruit. I can see clearly. Clearly. His feet tapped the ground dozens of times in an instant, and Darren's figure suddenly moved sideways and disappeared on the spot. Boom! Katakori's punch fell to the ground like a landslide, and the blow with all his strength directly tore the ground of the entire town. A shocking huge crack spread out from the point where the fist landed, madly devouring the buildings around the trajectory. Dozens of meters away, Darren's feet plowed a long groove on the ground, and he looked up suddenly when he stood firm. The curled-up body seemed to be a spring compressed to the extreme, and his legs pushed the ground hard. A huge pit collapsed within 100 meters of his feet. With the help of this terrifying recoil force, the Vice Admiral flew up like a cannonball. "I'm going to kill you!" Katakori roared at the top of his lungs. The bloody fists quickly struck in the air. The number of Wushwang donuts increased to 9, and fist shadows spread across the sky, once again covering Darren, who was moving at high speed in the air. 9-headed rice cake. In the violent fist shadows, the purple lightning in Darren's eyes surged wildly. At this time, the picture in front of him gradually changed. The fist shadow, which was originally too fast to be caught, slowed down rapidly under the perception of his skyrocketing observation hockey. Just like a movie screen played frame by frame, all trajectories and angles. All in sight. Then this scene took place. The figure of the Vice Admiral of the Navy kept flashing in the sky at a speed that could not be caught by the naked eye, and even a series of afterimages appeared. While constantly dodging Katakori's attacks, he used his flying ability and moon steps to step on the air and rushed towards the former. Ha 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 ha. Not enough, far from enough. Today, let your father, I, teach you a lesson, my son Katakori. Darren laughed like a villain, trying to stimulate Katakori's nerves and make him burst out with stronger fighting power. In the blink of an eye, he was infinitely close to the latter. A punch wrapped in domineering, hit hard. However, what Darren didn't expect was that facing his approach, Katakori did not adopt the tactic of keeping a distance, but instead came up with a furious face. Also threw a punch. Not a donut. But his own fist. The two fists were aimed at each other's heads at the same time. The next second, Darren tilted his head without warning. Katakori's fist just brushed past his hair. Bang! But his fist hit Katakori's face. The mighty force made the fist sink deeply into Katakori's face, his head tilted back, and blood splattered from his mouth and nose. If it weren't for the special superhuman physique bonus, I'm afraid that if it were someone else, his head would definitely be blown up like a watermelon by Darren's punch. Darren didn't dodge. Can't dodge. No. Katakori has lost his calm and reason. His observation hockey is invalid. Exclamation mark. What a mistake. No wonder his observation hockey didn't improve further. It turned out that he was too foul-mouthed and broke through the boy's psychological defense. Young people nowadays are so fragile and can't stand stimulation. Katakori is good at facing the enemy in a calm and rational state, and crushes his opponents with his observation hockey that can predict the future. Once he loses his firm will and calm mental state, although it seems that his conqueror hockey and strength have improved, in fact, his combat power has directly declined by more than half. With a bang, Katakori's figure sank heavily into the ground, smashing out a huge pit with a diameter of hundreds of meters. The ground shook. Buildings and houses collapsed, and smoke and dust rose. Looking at Katakori, who was lying in the ruins with blood all over his face and dying, Darren hesitated for a moment. To kill or not to kill? Although he is a Navy, it is his duty to kill pirates. But Darren is different from ordinary Navy. The key is to do whatever you want. Katakori's strength still has a lot of room for improvement. As long as he is stimulated, he will definitely be able to see the level of the Admiral level. Besides, his observation hockey has not yet been successfully mastered. If he is killed so easily, where can he find such a master in the future? Why don't you do it, damn Navy? Katakori stared at Darren fiercely, and his eyes had regained some clarity. Panting heavily, he suddenly roared hoarsely. Kill me. The shame of falling on his back and the self-blame of not being able to avenge his family made him want to die. Darren glanced at him and frowned. Don't you want to live now? After all, he is still too young. He thought about it, and suddenly grinned. I can't bear to do that. In Katakori's eyes, he sighed helplessly, and sighed seriously. You are my lovely son. Although you are a little naughty, have you ever seen an adult arguing with a child? Katakori was stunned for a moment. Wow! A pool of sticky dirty blood spit out from his mouth. He stared at the Vice Admiral in disbelief, and couldn't believe his ears. Just then. Darren, I heard it. So you have figured it out and are willing to agree to be my husband. A charming and slightly hoarse voice came from the sky in the distance. Huge waves began to gather in the clouds, like a huge black vortex, with beams of purple thunder stirring the wind and clouds in it. Darren's mouth twitched. Without any hesitation, he stepped on the dark blade of Yanmo, and the magnetic field pushed forward violently. His figure turned into a black light and flew away in an instant. What a joke! The battle with Katakori consumed a lot of energy, and Darren didn't want to face that woman now. Of course, even in his prime, he was no match for that crazy woman. It's okay to fight, but it's too bad. Big katakana middle dot mom's greedy eyes that want to swallow him up always make him feel creepy. Katakori looked at the Navy Vice Admiral who disappeared in a flash, with a confused face. I didn't agree. The voice of the Navy Vice Admiral gnashing his teeth came from a distance, and the distance was already very far. Don't dream, Charlotte Katakana middle dot Linlin. Chapter 39 Planting a Seed. The speed of the Navy Vice Admiral soared to the extreme, and he disappeared in less than a second. Only a white trail like a jet rocket was left in the distant sunset clouds. Katakori, who was seriously injured, looked at the scene dully, and his eyes trembled unconsciously. The arrogant Navy just now actually ran away like this. But at the same time as being stunned, a deep sense of powerlessness surged in his eyes. At this time, he had regained his sanity, and his observation haki was back to normal. Katakori felt a stronger breath from Darren's final escape than when they fought just now. This also means that the guy didn't use his full strength when fighting him. The bloody fingers sank deeply into the mottled soil. Katakori lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Is it really possible for me to kill that guy and avenge my dead brothers and sisters? What a ruthless man. At this time, big katakana middle dot mom's figure suddenly landed on the ground from the sea of clouds with wind and clouds, lightning and thunder. She glanced at the direction where Darren disappeared, and her red lips raised a charming smile. Even his running posture is so handsome, he is worthy of being the man I like. Charlotte Lingling licked her lips. She jumped down from the thundercloud Zeus, and walked in front of Katakori step by step with her long legs wearing high boots. Katakori, do you understand now? Katakori was stunned. He didn't raise his head, still kneeling there, panting and whispering. Mom, I don't understand what you mean. Charlotte Lingling giggled. Now that you have fought with Darren, you should understand why I chose him, right? His strength, his physique, his perfect body and genes, well, the combination of him and I will give birth to the strongest warrior in this sea. He will have the strongest physique, the most outstanding talent, and power beyond the giants. He will become the most powerful soldier for our Charlotte family to conquer this world. Hearing this, Katakori's bloodshot pupils suddenly shrank. The sarcastic words of the Vice Admiral echoed in his mind again at this moment. Don't you understand, Katakori? She dislikes you for being too weak, so she wants to give birth to a stronger son to replace you. Replace you, the highest masterpiece of the Charlotte family. Katakori's bloody hands clenched subconsciously, veins bulged on his back, and his finger bones turned bluish-white. So, Mom. His voice suddenly became extremely calm, and his hoarse voice echoed faintly in the air filled with the smell of gunpowder. You mean, in order to get his bloodline, even if so many of our relatives died. My brothers, your children died. It doesn't matter. Charlotte Lingling smiled. Of course, the weak are not qualified to be named Charlotte. Only those who are strong enough can be called my bloodline. Katakori, you are the best example. That's why you are the child I trust and rely on the most. Katakori was struck by lightning when he heard this. He knelt there woodenly, his hands trembling slightly. The last hope and light in his eyes faded away bit by bit like the sunset in the distant sky. So that's it. That damn Navy was right. So you really think so, my mother? So in the end, including me, all our brothers and sisters are just your weapons and tools in your eyes. Once there is a stronger big tool, we can be abandoned by you at any time, right? And I am the son you rely on and trust the most, just because I am stronger than others. What the Navy said is true. Even if so many brothers and sisters died, you would just say, it's okay, lightly. You really disappoint me. Well, Katakuri, stand up. Big katakana middle. Mom saw Katakuri kneeling there motionless, and smiled. Don't kneel there and embarrass yourself, you are the face of the big katakana middle. Mom pirates. You don't have to be too sad, wait until I get Darren and give birth to a powerful offspring with him. Then you will have brothers to help you share the current responsibilities, and you will also get a lovely brother. He will get along well with you, after all, you are the most perfect brother, right? When the time comes, you will wear my banner, shoulder the glory of the Charlotte family. Help me build a great country. After saying this, big katakana middle. Mom laughed and stepped on the thundercloud. Zeus flew into the sky, and soon disappeared. Katakuri was left standing there with a wooden expression. For a long time. No. Katakuri suddenly gritted his teeth, and in his decadent look, his eyes burst into a murderous cold light. He clenched his fist hard, and blood dripped from his arm. The blood-red eyes stared at the direction where big katakana middle. Mom disappeared. Mom, I will protect my family in my own way. As soon as the words fell. Boom. A more majestic, overbearing, and noisy aura suddenly burst out from Katakuri's body, causing his hair and clothes to fly wildly, almost sweeping the entire island. The impact of the domineering aura, which was like a substance, caused a strong wind like purgatory to blow between heaven and earth. If Darren was here, he would probably be able to sense it. The strength of Katakuri's domineering aura unexpectedly rose again. Very almost broke through the 50-point mark. In the exploding wind, Katakuri slowly stood up in the ruins, raised the trident with one hand, and walked away lonely and desolate. Like an abandoned wolf. No more hesitation. The eyes were firm. As if he had found the meaning of life. In the sky, the sea of clouds kept retreating. After making sure that he had escaped from the safe range, Darren slowed down and adjusted his slightly disordered breath. A smile slowly appeared on the corner of his mouth. This time, the Blitzkrieg of Nations not only successfully completed the mission objectives, but also gained a lot of unexpected surprises. Katakuri, teacher, needless to say, this kind of refreshing strength improvement is so comfortable that it makes every pore of the body open up and feel transparent. The most important thing is that Darren planted a seed in Katakuri's heart. Chapter 40. This is a famous teacher. Darren didn't know whether this seed could take root in Katakuri's heart and play its due role, but it was an interesting try. Charlotte Katakuri, Darren actually doesn't have much resentment towards this most brilliant and upright Charlotte in the original plot. On the contrary, he is very interested in this tragic character who is loyal to Big Mom and has a strong sense of belonging to the Big Mom pirates. Charlotte Linlin, this crazy woman, treats her children like tools, without any love at all, and acts only based on her personal mood. Even if her children disobey her orders, she will kill them directly without mercy. But Katakuri is different. This man has a broad mind that Big Mom does not have. As the core figure of the Big Mom pirates, he has been working hard to protect every member of the Charlotte family throughout his life. Darren is very curious. When the two originally non-contradictory options of loyalty to Big Mom and protecting family gradually go their separate ways and go to the opposite side, what choice will Katakuri make? Should he restrain his anger for revenge for his brother and continue to be loyal and filial to Big Katakana Middle. Mom? Or should he be disappointed with Big Katakana Middle. Mom and finally turn against her? Of course, apart from the curious, funny factor, Darren's words to sow discord between Katakuri and Big Katakana Middle. Mom have a deeper purpose. This is an experiment. After this, teaching, the improvement of the observation hockey Darren can get from katakuri is about to enter a bottleneck period. The higher the value of each ability, the greater the difficulty of further improvement, which is one factor. But the more important reason is that katakuri at this time has not yet reached the peak level of the vice-chairman in the original plot. Katakuri at this stage cannot bring Darren enough life and death pressure. In other words, the leaks are not fat enough and need to be raised again. But Darren has no patience to wait for 20 or 30 years. He must stimulate Katakuri's heart and make him grow faster. If we can take this opportunity to make Katakuri's loyalty and submission to Big Katakana Mom waver, then things will become very interesting. At least according to Darren's judgment, the reason why Katakuri was unable to reach the Admiral level in the original plot was most likely because of Big Katakana Mom. His submission and excessive loyalty to Big Katakana Mom, his responsibilities and pressure on his family, severely restricted his strength development. The same reason applies to Jin and Marco. Unlike Ben Beckman, the Emperor's deputy, with Admiral-level combat power, Katakuri, Flame Disaster, Jin and Marco have a obedient relationship with their captain. Rather than saying they are Emperor's deputy, it is better to say that they are just slightly stronger subordinates. The real Emperor's deputy, or Emperor's wings, is an equal relationship like Beckman and Red Hair, Rayleigh and Roger. There is no hierarchy between superiors and subordinates, but equality between comrades and partners. The world of pirates is very magical. Willpower, or heart power, is a very important factor that affects the performance and improvement of strength. Once the will is shaken, or once the will to submit to someone is formed, the strength will directly stagnate or even seriously regress. There are countless examples like this. In his youth, Gecko Moria was able to fight Kaido head-on, but after all the crew members were killed, he was directly devastated, and his strength regressed to the point that he could not even use haki, and anyone could beat him. As a rookie, Crocodile entered the new world with great momentum, so strong that no one could stop him, and he could even fight with Barrett for days and nights. After being defeated by Whitebeard, he was completely depressed and prayed for the power of ancient weapons, and was finally picked up by King Luffy. During the prison break in Impel Down, Crocodile regained his inner faith and decided to go to sea again. With his will restored and firm, his combat power increased greatly in the war at the top, and he was evenly matched in all aspects, and could be called the MVP of the game. In addition to the two of them, Doflamingo is also a good example. He was supposed to be the Pirate King, but after seeing Kaido's terrifying combat power, he chose to surrender and cooperate, and even changed color when talking about Kaido's name. Otherwise, with his talent, he would definitely have a higher development. Darren didn't know what kind of stimulation his words would bring to Katakuri. But he was looking forward to a stronger Katakuri. After all, his observation haki had not yet been successfully launched. If Katakuri and Big Katakana Mom turned against each other because of his instigation, things would be even more interesting. Thinking of this, Darren roared towards the direction of Marine Headquarters Marineford, while unfolding his perception talent to check his physical condition. Physique, 88.649, Steel Body. Strength, 78.513. Speed, 78.711. Fruit Ability Development, 85.211, Island Coverage. Armament Haki, 59.035. Observation Haki, 72.117, Magnetic Field Induction. Conqueror Haki, 60.000. Physique, Strength and Armed Haki increased by nearly 1 point. After all, Katakuri's punches were not in vain. Speed increased by 2 points, which is quite normal. During the special training of observation haki, the evasive action occupied 1 point. More, the body and nerve reactions have improved significantly. The Conqueror haki has also entered the 60 mark from the original 59 points. For the training method of Conqueror haki, Darren has not yet found a big rule. This is the embodiment of will and heart power, and it is the external characteristic of spirit. But what is certain is that fighting with strong people and the collision of Conqueror haki can improve slightly. The fastest progress is of course the strength of observation hockey. Looking at the observation hockey that soared from 47 to 72 in half a day, Darren's heart was directly happy, and he couldn't help but sigh. What an elite officer training camp, it's really not as good as the two famous teachers Quinn and Katakuri. Of course, this is just a joke. In fact, Darren is quite clear in his heart that if it weren't for Zepha's teaching in the training camp to help him lay a solid foundation, he would never be able to improve so quickly. Pondering the newly emerged, magnetic field sensing, ability, Darren is increasingly looking forward to the two items of strength and speed that are about to break through to 80 points. So, do you want to go to Wano country to explore the way? Darren's eyes rolled, he touched his chin and murmured. Chapter 41 I am in Wano country. Ever since Darren helped the Navy destroy the headquarters of the Beast's pirates, Kaido has been hiding with the remnants of the Beast's pirates and disappeared completely. The few times he appeared were when, Flame Disaster, Jin fought for the Momo fruit on the Coin Island, and Kaido teamed up with Golden Lion and Big Mom to invade the marine headquarters Marineford. In fact, after the capture of the original headquarters of the Beast's pirates, the Navy headquarters had formulated a plan to pursue the victory and defeat Kaido and the remnants of the Beast's pirates. However, due to the lack of intelligence and the unclear situation in the New World, the plan had to be shelved in the end. But the Navy headquarters doesn't know where Kaido is hiding, so how could Darren not know? Based on his understanding of the original plot, Darren has enough reason to infer that Kaido has a high probability of invading Wano country. After all, the only fighting force in Wano country that can resist Kaido, Kazuki Oden, has already set sail and boarded the pirate ship of the Whitebeard pirates. With Kaido's sinister and ambitious character, he will definitely take this opportunity to invade Wano country, and unite with Kurozumi Orochi as in the original plot, completely control the regime of that country, and turn it into his base to dominate the sea. At the beginning of this, blitzkrieg, operation, Darren also had the idea of Kaido, but in the end he chose the Wano country ruled by Big Katakana Middle Mom. One reason is that he is not sure whether Kaido is in Wano country, and the other reason is the problem of strength. If he launches a blitzkrieg attack on Wano country, putting aside the political public opinion and pressure for the time being, Darren is likely to suffer. After all, Kaido is not the only one who has the ability to fly in the Beast's pirates. In addition to Kaido himself, the highest cadre of the Beast's pirates, Flame Disaster, Jin, also has a strong ability to fly. If he was entangled by those two guys when he attacked Wano country, even if he could successfully raid in the end, he would not get any benefits. But Totland of the World is different. The territory of Totland of the World ruled by Big Katakana Middle Mom is extremely vast, and dozens of islands of power are scattered across the vast ocean. As long as he does not rush into Cake Island, the headquarters of the world, no one can stop him except Big Katakana Middle Mom himself. And the most important point is that Darren needs a beautiful victory to consolidate his reputation and fulfill his promise, so the goal of Desert Island is the best. And the final result proved that Darren's judgment was correct. The live broadcast effect of the Blitz raid was very good, and he had successfully completed the task. This also means that Darren can now act freely. In the next action, he no longer needs to worry about winning or losing, he just needs to act as he pleases. Then, it's time to explore Wano country. The most important point is, unlike before, after the teaching of Katakuri, the famous teacher, Darren's observation hockey strength has been unprecedentedly improved, and his overall strength has also increased a lot. Now Darren is confident that with his current strength, even if he goes deep into Wano country and is besieged by Kaido and Jin, as long as he is a little more careful, he can escape unscrupulously. After all, Kaido's strength at this time has not reached its peak, far less than that crazy woman Big Katakana Middle Mom. In this case, what is there to hesitate about? Just do it. With an unbridled arc at the corner of Darren's mouth, his eyes were eager to try, and he controlled Yanmo under his feet. His figure instantly turned a sharp right angle in the sky and turned around to shoot in a certain direction. Navy Headquarters, Marineford. General's Office. Moshimoshi, yes, King Knock, it's me. Zhang smiled cordially and said to the Den Den Mushi in front of him. On behalf of the Navy headquarters, I would like to express my gratitude to your country for its support for the reconstruction of Marineford. Darren Vice Admiral. Of course, I have been optimistic about that kid from the beginning. After a round of meaningless greetings, Sengoku hung up the Den Den Mushi and let out a long breath of fatigue. This is already the 13th call. Although the royal families of these member countries did not donate much to the Navy headquarters in the end, most of them were around 30 to 40 million baileys. After all, if the amount was larger, the supervisory department of the world government would have something to say. Although these so-called donations were more in form than in substance, Sengoku did not think it was too little, and a mosquito was still meat. So it is reasonable for the Navy headquarters to make a symbolic phone call to the members of the member states who donated money to express their gratitude politely. This should be the work scope of the Navy Admiral. It is just that Admiral Kong can't afford to lose that person, so he gave this important task to Zhang Guo under the pretext of training his character. Click, click. This is a crisp sound that sounded next to him. Zhang Guo's eyelids twitched, and he turned his head and glared at Garp, who was sitting there without any manners, and said unhappily. Garp, if you have nothing to do, come and help, don't just eat my senbei here. He, old man Kong said this is for your practice. Garp laughed heartlessly. Zhang Guo's mouth twitched. Besides, Zhang Guo, I can't afford to lose that person. While chewing on the rice crackers, Garp laughed and said. You are a great admiral of the Navy. For a few billion berries, you are on good terms with a bunch of drunkards with big stomachs. It's really, tisk tisk tisk. Zhang Guo's face flushed, and he slammed the table and said. Asshole Garp, if you don't work, get out of here. Okay, I really can't take a joke. Garp shrank his head and muttered. Seeing that the veins on Zhang Guo's forehead were about to burst, he quickly picked up a few unopened rice crackers and ran out of the office. Zhang Guo sat down again and pinched his temples with a headache. Is this job difficult? At this time, Staff Officer Crane pushed the door open with a stack of documents in his hand, and looking at the painful face of Warring States, he couldn't help but laugh and teased. Warring States shook his head and sighed. Someone has to do these things. The mission of the Navy is not just fighting. He raised the list in his hand and smiled. The amount of donations may not seem to be much, but it is also a considerable amount when accumulated. After that, Warring States patted his face, cheered up again, picked up the Den Den Mushi and dialed the next phone signal, forcing a warm smile on his face. Moshi, King Raphael, I am Admiral Warring States of the Navy headquarters. Staff Officer Crane sat aside, quietly watching Warring States who entered the working state, with a smile on his face. Yes, it's just a little face-saving and polite. If this can be for us, the Navy builds one more fortress, one more warship, or even gives more compensation to the families of the dead. Why not? The Navy not only needs brave warriors like Garp who rush to the front line, but also warriors like Sengoku who silently dedicate themselves behind the scenes. Half an hour later, Sengoku, solved, the last person on the list, and put down the Den Den Mushi with a tired face. At this moment, he would rather fight a big battle with the Golden Lion than face that group of arrogant politicians and nobles. By the way, Xiao He, is Darren back? It's about time, right? Sengoku lit a cigar and suddenly asked the Crane staff officer. The Crane staff officer, who was working on the documents with his head down, was stunned and shook his head. No news yet. Warring States frowned. Did something happen? After destroying the expansion town on the Snack Island, the live broadcast was interrupted, and they didn't know the situation on Darren's side. After thinking about it, Warring States picked up the military Den Den Mushi again and dialed Darren's personal signal. Bulu Bulu. Bulu Bulu. A few seconds later, the Den Den Mushi communication was connected. General Warring States. Darren's low voice came from the Den Den Mushi. Warring States felt relieved, but still frowned seriously and said. Darren boy, haven't you returned to the headquarters yet? Where did you go? The Den Den Mushi paused for a second. Then Warring States saw the Den Den Mushi in front of him, and vividly imitated Darren's defiant smile. General Warring States, I'm in Wano country. What? Warring States' face changed drastically, and he stood up suddenly. I went out to play today, so I updated late, sorry. Chapter 42. What are you doing when you have nothing to do? Staff Officer Suru next to him also looked incredulous, staring at Den Den Mushi. Darren, what are you doing in Wano country? Warring States listened to Darren's mysterious tone, and a bad premonition surged in his heart. You know, Warring States has heard this tone of confidence and trouble more than once. On the eve of the ambush of World Destroyer, Bondi Valdo in the North Sea. When solving the murder of the Celestial Dragons in the North Sea. At the graduation ceremony of the officer training camp. And when the Blitz attack on Wano country was about to be launched a few hours ago. Warring States has heard this tone from Darren. The various complex situations in Wano country, the pressure of political public opinion, all kinds of thoughts flashed through Warring States' mind. The more he thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. The horrifying scene of the expansion town in the Wangguo Snack Island being razed to the ground in an instant also emerged in his mind. This brat, would he go to Wano country to cause trouble? Thinking of this, Sengoku felt his scalp tingling. General Sengoku, I just completed the mission and have nothing to do, so I came to Wano country. Darren's overly relaxed voice came out of the Den Den Mushi, but it made Sengoku and Suru feel frightened. Can't you come back to the headquarters if you have nothing to do? If not, you can go to Fengyu Street to drink and watch dancing. Why do you have to go to Wano country? Sengoku was mad, gritting his teeth and said. You little brat, you should know what Wano country is better than me. The situation in that country is so complicated, and there are all kinds of samurai groups entrenched. What kind of political impact will it have if you, a navy, show up in Wano country rashly? What if you have a conflict with the samurai group? Those stubborn guys are not easy to mess with. Although Wano country maintains a policy of isolation and is basically isolated from the outside world, Sengoku knows more or less about the samurai of Wano country through the Navy's intelligence network and rumors circulating on the sea. They are a group of crazy people who don't care about their lives. They follow their Bushido spirit, fight for the glory and dignity of the monarch, and draw their swords if they disagree. If they can win, they will fight to the death, and if they can't win, they will die with you. Even as strong as the Navy, they don't want to be enemies with these stubborn and rigid guys who are too powerful. It's not that they can't beat them, but that it's too much of a headache to deal with them. And once Darren and the samurai group of Wano country have a conflict, it will not only be a matter of the Navy's suppression of pirates. This has already involved the political level of diplomacy. The Navy actually declared war on a neutral country. Even if Wano country is not a member of the world government, it will probably cause dissatisfaction and protests from many powerful neutral countries on the sea. Of course I understand, Admiral Sengoku. The tone of the Vice Admiral did not change at all because of Sengoku's anxiety, and he still maintained a nonchalant smile. However, I think you should be very interested in the following news. What bullshit news? I have no interest at all. Darren boy, don't make trouble for me. I order you to return home immediately, and evacuate immediately before being discovered by the samurai forces of Wano country. Sengoku became anxious and directly picked up the Den Den Mushi and roared. However, Darren's next words made him stunned there. I found a super large-scale weapons production line in Wano country. It is far beyond the scale of the previous headquarters of the Beast's pirates. Zhongguo's pupils suddenly shrank. He and Staff Officer Crane looked at each other subconsciously, and both saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. They knew very well how large the scale of the military production line built in the headquarters of the Beast's pirates was. That was enough to equip at least twice the scale of all the Navy in the world. Why would such a large-scale weapons production line appear in Wano country? That is a closed country. That country has not launched a war against the outside world, and the outside world dare not launch a war against it. And most of the power groups in that country are samurai. As we all know, samurai are good at kendo and have a contemptuous attitude towards firearms such as guns and cannons. This kind of large-scale standard military factory that produces weapons is the last thing Wano country needs. But now, Darren actually said that he found such a large-scale military weapons production line in this country. This is simply impossible. What do those samurai need so much munitions for? Wage a world war. Darren, are you sure? Zhang Guo's tone suddenly became cautious, and his eyebrows twisted into a Chuan character. I'm not a joker, General Zhang Guo. Darren said with a smile. Zhang Guo's mouth twitched. Darren continued. But since General Zhang Guo is not interested in this news, I will follow your order and evacuate directly. Zhang Guo. Zhang Guo covered his heart and gritted his teeth. Hurry up and tell me. Brat. The other side of the Den Den Mushi. In the sea of clouds in the sky. Darren squinted and looked at the huge and undulating buildings on the land of Kuri district in Wano country in the distance. A large black chimney extended upward from the buildings, emitting billowing black smoke. The entire military factory complex is hidden in the mountains, radiating out all the way. From the sky, it looks like an endless black ocean. I found you, Kaido. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he smiled. I saw the flag of the beast pirates. The Den Den Mushi suddenly became quiet. Darren seemed to be able to hear the sound of Sengoku taking a breath of cold air on the Den Den Mushi side. 3 seconds later, Sengoku's extremely serious voice came out. Darren, what did you do? Very good. I didn't expect Kaido to invade Wano country. This information is extremely important to our navy. However, you must not act rashly when it comes to world diplomacy, politics and public opinion. This matter must be carefully discussed by the headquarters. Blue. Darren directly cut off the Den Den Mushi. Marineford, Navy Headquarters. Admiral's Office. Zhang Guo stared at the sleeping military Den Den Mushi in front of him in amazement, his expression gradually turned livid and stiff. That stinky boy, actually, dared to hang up my phone call. He said blankly, as if he couldn't believe what he saw. Staff Officer Suru looked at Zhang Guo, whose face was gradually turning blue and black, and his eyes twitched. He coughed twice and said, "It should be a bad signal, it should be. It's just that her tone is not so sure. Chapter 43 Can't you just talk about it? Warring States." He suddenly slammed the table and said angrily. Darren, that bastard boy. Who does he think he is? I am the general of the headquarters, his direct superior. How dare you hang up my Den Den Mushi communication? I have never been hung up by a mere vice-general of the headquarters. The Crane staff officer next to him suddenly said. Garp seems to do this often, right? Warring States. He looked at the Crane staff officer next to him with a face full of resentment, and felt his heart blocked even more. Xiaohei, you have changed. Warring States said faintly. You were not like this before. Staff officer he smiled. She is not really old, less than 50 years old, but because she works hard day and night on the tedious internal affairs of the Navy, her dark black hair has turned gray. But time never defeats beauty. The crow's feet at the corners of her eyes and her gray hair give staff officer he a unique beauty of frost. Don't worry, Zhang Guo. Although Darren is lawless, he still does things with propriety most of the time. In terms of political sensitivity, Darren is actually not inferior to you. Don't forget that when he was in the North Sea, he was able to get along with everyone and handle things with ease. The calm voice of the Crane staff made Zhang Guo calm down quickly. He took a deep puff of his cigar, and paced back and forth in the office with his hands folded across his chest, frowning. After a while, Zhang Guo suddenly stopped and said solemnly. Having said that, I am still a little worried. Let's go to Marshal Kong first. The Crane staff nodded in agreement. If Darren really decides to go to war with Kaido in Wano country, then they must be ready to support at any time. Such a major decision cannot be made by the two of them alone. So they hurried to the marshal's office. Woke up the resting steel bone Kong, and sorted out the specific development of the matter in a few words. Darren is going to go to war with the beast pirates in Wano country. Hearing the report from the two of Zhang Guo, Steelbone Kong shuddered instantly and lost all sleepiness. Damn it! Zhang Guo, why didn't you stop him? Zhang Guo's tone stagnated. Just as he was about to stammer and try to explain himself, he caught a glimpse of Staff Officer He winking at him. He was stunned for a moment, then reacted instantly and said in a deep voice. Marshal Kong, just as you judged, I also wanted to stop him at first. But because the Den Den Mushi signal was not good, the call was interrupted before it was finished. Zhang Guo's expression was extremely serious and earnest, as if this was a fact that was set in stone. At this moment, he suddenly understood. Darren deliberately hung up the communication with his Den Den Mushi in order to remove himself from this wanton action. Even if Darren did something wrong, he, the Admiral of the Navy, would not be held jointly responsible. Darren, that stinky boy, is quite good. Zhang Guo muttered in his heart. Hearing Zhang Guo's words, Steelbone Sora was stunned. Staff Officer Crane added at the right time. Marshal Sora, the terrain of Wano country is special, and the surrounding sea currents are chaotic, which may have unpredictable effects on the magnetic field and signals. Steelbone Sora heard their answer without any doubt, but pinched his temples with a headache. Damn, at this time. In that case, let's also prepare for mobilization here. He stood up from his chair, pressed his powerful hands on the desk, and said solemnly. On the one hand, we should provide all-round support, and at the same time, we should be prepared to deal with diplomatic public opinion. Zhang Guo and Suru staff both shuddered, raised their hands and saluted. Yes, Marshal Kong. Wano country. Curry area. In a palace with Japanese decoration style. Lord Kaido, the deployment of the periphery has been completed, and all major ports have been blocked by the elite of our beast pirates. The flame disaster, Jin, with a solemn and cold aura, knelt on one knee and reported in a deep voice. Hearing this, Kaido's slightly uneasy mood eased a little. The plan and deployment of Wano country are the foundation and confidence for his future domination of the sea. He realized a long time ago that if he wanted to dominate the New World and launch an unprecedented war, it would be far from enough to rely on his own strength alone. Strong subordinates, strong forces, and a large-scale army troops, and military resources to stir up chaos in the world. These are all important parts of his plan to establish an anarchic, pirate empire. Only by firmly controlling Wano country, a country with rich mineral and military resources and superior geographical location, can he be qualified to compete with those guys. Charlotte Linlin enjoys the 10,000 nations Totland, Whitebeard has a strong army, and Golden Lion has a flying fleet. And he only has Wano country. No matter what, there must be no accidents in his arrangements in this country. But then again, are we so cautious? Doesn't the Navy know that we are in Wano country? At this time, the fat man Quinn, who was drinking red bean soup next to him, muttered in a low voice. The beast's pirates are on high alert and are afraid of enemies everywhere, but Quinn is quite dissatisfied. After all, in such a tense atmosphere, no one will have a singing and dancing party with him. Shut up. Jin glared at him fiercely. Quinn said with a face full of injustice. Can't you even talk about it? I've been studying a more efficient arsenal production line all this time. I'm just saying that, and it won't attract that Navy. Boom. Before he finished speaking, a huge earth-shaking roar came from afar. The ground under his feet began to shake, as if a huge dragon was rolling among the distant mountains, making a dull whine. Kaido and Jin's pupils shrank, and their faces suddenly changed. This is the direction of the military factory production line in Julie district. Something bad is going to happen. At this moment, a cadre of the beast pirates wearing animal skin rushed in a panic, kneeling on the ground with a pale face. That Navy is here. What? Kaido and Jin's eyes instantly turned red. They turned their heads together, staring at Quinn with murderous eyes. The fat man stood there in a daze, and his metal arm subconsciously covered his mouth. Damn Navy brat. Kaido didn't bother to deal with Quinn, the bastard, and roared in anger. He picked up the huge mace on the ground with one hand, and in a blink of an eye, he turned into a huge monster that covered the sky and sun, and smashed through the dome of the palace hall and soared into the sky. Darren brat, you are here to die. Under the excitement of the domineering color of the king, the endless storm derived dense black and red lightning, occupying the dark sky. The eyes of the blue dragon seemed to spit out fire, and roared to the sky. Chapter 44 How did you become so much stronger? The dome of the palace, which was decorated with complicated and luxurious decorations, suddenly shattered, and the dark sky with countless black and red lightning storms flashing suddenly came into everyone's eyes. A large amount of rubble and bricks fell, the walls were torn and vibrated, and dust flew. The members of the beast's pirates in the palace hall immediately fell into chaos. Everyone covered their heads and fled, struggling to resist the impact of their boss's domineering aura while dodging the boulders falling from the top of their heads. Prepare for battle. Jin kicked away the boulders that were falling in front of him, and the black wings behind him ignited a blazing red flame, and shouted. Quinn, organize rescue and guard the arsenal area. Fat Quinn shuddered, and his fat body stood up tremblingly, and he nodded quickly. Okay. As soon as the words fell, a murderous aura suddenly burst out from Jin's body, and the black wings burning with mysterious flames shook vigorously, and the figure suddenly flew up. His body quickly changed in midair, transforming into a pitch-black pterosaur, and soared over following the soaring figure of the blue dragon. Boom boom. In the rolling mountains in the distance of Julie district, a huge amount of dust was like a dragon turning over, rising like waves one after another. The earth was wailing, and a large number of cracks appeared in the barriers of the mountain. The huge arsenal complex hidden in the mountains has turned into a sea of fire. The machinery, lathes and chimneys made of steel were constantly twisted and collapsed under some strange and invisible force, and then ignited a raging flame under the explosion of the high-temperature furnace. Black smoke billowed, and the flames were like huge red wings, licking the belly of the night sky with a roar. When Kaido saw the tragic scene in front of him, his eyes, which were red because of rage, almost burst out of his eye sockets as if they were about to crack. There are many political divisions in Wano country, among which more than 50% of the arsenal industries established by the Beast Pirates are located in Julie district. In less than 10 seconds, the arsenal production line in Julie district has been destroyed by that bastard navy. Damn it. Kaido, who transformed into a blue dragon, swept his eyes across the sky filled with black smoke and instantly locked onto a figure. Darren kid. Kaido roared hysterically, the murderous intent and anger in his tone seemed to pierce the air. However, facing his erupting anger, Darren, who was busy with demolition, just smiled and raised his head, waved at him, as if greeting an old friend, and said with a relaxed expression. Hey, Kaido, you're here He pointed to the arsenal complex that had turned into a sea of fire on the ground, and said with some surprise, it's really terrible. Such a huge arms production line was built so quickly. Qinglong's angry expression suddenly froze. Hey, you're here, what the hell? Do I know you well? The shame of being teased mixed with boundless anger, erupting like a volcano. You're dead. Qinglong roared with thunder that tore through the sky, and his bloody mouth full of sharp teeth suddenly opened. The violent airflow quickly gathered in the dragon's mouth, and instantly compressed into dozens of green wind blades, like a sharp slash like a sickle weasel, densely covering Darren. Bad wind. The wind blade broke through the air, and the air burst into a sharp buzzing sound. The coverage area was so large that it directly blocked a large area. However, at this moment, two purple electric lights suddenly surged out strangely in the depths of the Navy Vice Admiral's pupils. He moved without any warning. The figure repeatedly moved sideways in the sky, and more than a dozen afterimages were derived at a very fast speed. The wind blades that were enough to cut fortresses and warships were dodged by him, passing by him, and cutting criss-crossing terrifying traces on the distant land. This is... Kaido's pupils shrank. This kid's speed has improved a lot compared to when he was in Marineford not long ago. No, not speed. But... Kaido suddenly widened his eyes and stared at Darren with disbelief. How could your observation haki become so much stronger? Darren grinned. Who knows? With a buzz, a coin suddenly flew up between his thumbs. The coin, which exuded a cold and hard luster, kept turning in the air, reflecting the different expressions of Darren and Kaido. Magnetic overload, electromagnetic cannon. The index finger flicked. Boom. A blue-white magnificent beam suddenly burst out from in front of Darren, piercing straight through the void, exploding circles of white air waves, and spraying towards the giant dragon that covered the sky. The electromagnetic cannon, a powerful move, is not very meaningful for a guy like Golden Lion who is too flexible, and Darren is also afraid of accidentally hurting other Navy in Marineford, so he didn't use it. But for a huge live target like Kaido, it is undoubtedly the most effective way to attack. Damn Ling Ling, what on earth did she do? Kaido roared in anger, opened his mouth again, and spurted out a surging column of flames. Hot breath. The two attacks of different colors, red and blue, collided heavily in midair, and the dark sky was instantly illuminated by the dazzling light as if it were daytime. The entire Wano country was dead silent for a moment. Then the deafening roar and explosion bloomed in the sky. In the rich firelight, the huge black shadow roaming in the sky shrank rapidly, visible to the naked eye, and Kaido's demon-like figure fell from the sky. A head of black messy hair danced wildly, like a madman. The strength of the observation haki displayed by this Navy kid in the Battle of Marineford was far less powerful than it is now. And the most important thing is that I witnessed his fight with Charlotte Owen through the video Den Den Mushi a few hours ago, and I know the true level of Darren's observation haki. It's only been half a day, and this Navy kid's observation haki has been improved to this level. This is simply unbelievable. In addition to the crazy woman Ling Ling personally teaching the secret of observation haki, Kaido really couldn't figure out what other way Darren could do this. But the moment this thought came up, Kaido's back was chilled and a layer of cold sweat oozed out. If Darren's observation haki was taught by that crazy woman, then does this mean that the two of them have reached some kind of deal in private? Is there even such a possibility? The information about the beast pirates in Wano country was exposed to Darren by Linlin. That crazy woman Linlin wanted to use this Navy kid to weaken her own power. The more Kaido thought about it, the more he was in doubt. But his movements were not slow at all. He saw that he held the black mace covered with spikes with both hands at the same time, and roared towards the Navy Vice Admiral like thunder. Like a gust of wind, like a roaring thunder, hundreds of meters away in an instant. The purple lightning wrapped around the mace, dragging a thunder-like light mark in the void. Thunderous Bagua. Chapter 45 Fist Bone. A lightning-fast blow. Darren's eyes suddenly widened, and a dazzling purple electric light burst out from the depths of his pupils. Although it was not the first time he faced Kaido's messy, swinging stick, trick, no matter how many times he faced the pressure of this trick, the oppression was still so overbearing that it made people suffocate. Too fast. It was as if lightning pierced through the void, and the thunderous power and speed burst out in an absolute straight line. The sight could not catch it at all. Even with Darren's enhanced observation haki with the magneto-magnetic fruit and increased sensitivity, he could only vaguely grasp a very vague light trace. The 8 fasts wrapped in wind and thunder went first, giving people the feeling that it was not Kaido swinging the mace, but the mace was dragging Kaido. At this moment, Darren couldn't help but make a scene between Katakuri and Kaido in front of him, horizontal comparison. He can be 100% sure that even if he unfolds the future foreseeing observation haki, Katakuri can't avoid Kaido's stick. Foreseeing the future does not mean invincibility. When the opponent's strength is enough to give you a crushing advantage, when the opponent's speed exceeds the nerve reaction of your body muscles, you will only face deep powerlessness and despair. In dozens or even hundreds of future scenes, no matter what judgments and actions you make, the final outcome is exactly the same, without any change, and you will only be knocked out by this stick. That's great, but it's a pity. Darren's lips suddenly raised a rebellious arc, and infinite fighting spirit rose like a flame. I don't plan to hide either. Shish. The pitch-black armed color domineering instantly wrapped around the entire arm, and a layer of white smoke even emerged on the surface of the skin when the domineering was filled. I came to Wano country to find Kaido, not to practice observation haki. The wind exploded, lifting the ends of my hair. At this moment, facing this shocking blow, Darren's spirit, will and strength were highly condensed to an unprecedented degree. Darren, the power is unity. The moment you swing your fist, you should not have any distracting thoughts. This is a punch that implements the will. Garp's unreliable teachings suddenly flashed in his mind. As the focus of Darren's pupils gathered an amazing light, everything he saw seemed to fade away like a tide at this moment. The wind disappeared. The lightning dissipated. The mountains, cliffs, and currents of Wano country. And the mace that was close at hand, everything disappeared. Instead, there was a silence. It was the warm wind, the sound of waves hitting the shore, the punch under the sun. And the battered warship in front of him. Darren seemed to have returned to the abandoned naval port of Marineford, the headquarters of the Navy. In his eyes, there was only that shaky warship. The mind and body skills are integrated at this moment. Armament hockey plus 0.893. Armament hockey strength. At this moment, it has finally broken through the 60-point mark from 59 points. The visible armament hockey spirals along the arms and fists like flowing water, twisting the surrounding space like a real air wave. Darren's eyes were bright and fiery, and he couldn't help laughing. I understand. A punch was thrown. Hockey roared like thunder, and the fist wind turned into an exploding hurricane. Facing Kaido's thunderous Bagua head-on. Fist bone katakana middle dot lightning attack. Boom. The mace and fist, which were also wrapped in hockey, collided violently in the sky like a meteor hitting the earth. The exaggerated air wave was like a vast storm that swept everything, spreading wildly in all directions with the two as the center. Even though the two were in midair, the expanding air waves suddenly pressed down, cracking the ground within a radius of several kilometers and causing huge waves. The two completely different red and blue auras burst out crazily from the ghostly figure, crushing and devouring each other, radiating terrifying shock waves. At this time, Flame Disaster, Jin, who had just transformed into a pterosaur and rushed out of the palace hall, saw this amazing scene, and his figure suddenly stagnated, his face full of disbelief. That marine actually blocked Brother Kaido's Thunder Bagua head-on. How is this possible? What on earth happened? Although Jin did not participate in the invasion of Marineford, he saw Darren's full strength with his own eyes when he was on the Coin Island. When fighting for the Momo fruit on the Coin Island, although this marine relied on the limitations of the Devil Fruit ability and a little luck to block the knife of the great pirate Golden Lion. But Jin knew very well that if it weren't for the amazing physique of this marine, he would not only be seriously injured but also killed on the spot under the shocking swordsmanship of the Golden Lion. But now, how long has it been? 1 month. The strength of this marine has grown so fast. He has surpassed himself. What happened to that marine? Is the teaching effect of the officer training camp of the Navy headquarters really so exaggerated? This is impossible. At this time, Kaido suddenly burst into an incredible roar, staring at Darren in front of him with red eyes. There was a storm in his heart. The marine kid in front of him, who he could easily kill with a stick, is infinitely close to that level of combat power, and is only 1 step away. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of Darren's mouth. Although he successfully blocked Kaido's stick with his pure strength, the latter's strength and domineering were still far superior to his. Darren felt that his body was overturned by Kaido's domineering. But he still grinned wantonly, revealing his blood-stained teeth. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. The armed color domineering has broken through 60 points. As long as the strength and speed are increased to 80 points. I can really step into that threshold. This is all thanks to Quinn's teacher's teachings. If he hadn't injected me with those messy deadly viruses, my strength wouldn't have skyrocketed so fast. Quote. After the voice fell, Kaido and Jin's pupils shrank at the same time. Countless thoughts flashed through their minds. Yes. Although the strength of the Navy has improved rapidly recently. In fact, the period when his strength improved the fastest was when he was imprisoned in Quinn Prison. They all turned their heads and looked at the arsenal buildings that were on fire in the mountains. At that location, Quinn, who had transformed into a giant brachiosaurus and led the members of the Beast Pirates to rescue, suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He turned around, facing the murderous gazes of Kaido and Jin, his old face flushed red, and roared. "I didn't, don't talk nonsense. Quote. This has nothing to do with me. Chapter 46 Come on, Kaido-sensei." Quinn's flushed face was full of injustice and extreme resentment. He obviously did nothing. He just followed the orders of Boss Kaido and made the two imprisoned kids live a life worse than death. He also used the latest developed viruses. Who would have thought that the deadly virus he painstakingly researched would make them stronger? "I'll deal with you later." Kaido glared at the fat man fiercely and roared. His body shape changed dramatically quickly, and his body suddenly grew 1 meter taller. A pair of sharp dragon horns pierced through the skin from his forehead, and the surface of his skin was covered with dense green dragon scales. A thick and powerful dragon tail grew out from the coccyx. Dragon Man form. As Kaido displayed this form, a fierce, primitive and violent aura rose like a sea of blood and corpses, and the arms holding the mace exerted force brazenly. Large chunks of muscles bulged and blue veins bulged. Darren only felt the power transmitted from the mace suddenly increased, and his face changed slightly. "Don't be too arrogant, Navy kid." Kaido gritted his teeth and roared. Sizzle, sizzle. The domineering aura swept out from his devilish body, wrapped around the black mace, and pressed down fiercely. Boom. The aura burst produced a thunderous sound, and a circle of white air ripples spread out. Darren finally couldn't bear Kaido's explosive power, and the whole person was smashed into the ground between the mountains below like a cannonball. As if hit by a small meteorite, the land structure covering a diameter of several kilometers was directly collapsed, blasting a shocking huge pit, smoke and dust rising into the sky. Kaido's figure also descended from the sky, and his powerful force trampled a deep pit on the cracked ground. He held the mace Bajiji, white smoke spurted out of his nostrils, and walked step by step towards the figure who slowly stood up in the deep pit. "Although I don't know what method you used to improve your strength to this level. But if you think you can do whatever you want in my territory, you are wrong, Navy kid." Kaido's blood-red eyes flashed with violent and fierce light, and every step he took made the ground under his feet tremble, full of oppression. Countless black and red lightnings surrounded his body and spread in bunches, constantly shattering the thick clouds in the sky. Observation Haki is just a threshold. Strong physique, beast-like strength, powerful domineering, are the foundation of my existence in this sea. A black military boot suddenly stepped out from the billowing smoke and dust. The strong wind blew away the thick smoke, and the rebellious look of the vice-admiral with blood in his mouth suddenly emerged. He laughed wantonly, as if he was not aware of the injuries on his body at all. With a bang, Darren's figure shot out from the spot like a tiger out of a cage. Maintaining an offensive posture that was almost like a dive, facing a powerful pirate like Kaido, he actually launched an attack instead of retreating. "Of course I know this kind of thing. Do you think I really have nothing to do and come to Wano country for a trip?" At this time, Darren's face, which was slightly pale due to the injury, was madly red, and the almost boiling blood rushed into his heart, bringing a sense of disillusionment of being resurrected from the brink of death, but his limbs were filled with a violent breath. It worked. After taking Kaido's blow just now, Darren clearly felt that his various physical data, which had no response to daily training, had obvious changes. Physique plus 0.121. Strength plus 0.183. Speed plus 0.168. Armament Haki plus 0.629. With this speed of improvement, if there are a few more hits, maybe he will can steadily break through and enter the level of general level combat power. You know, Darren's basic values of various abilities are already quite high now, and even hard training has no effect. He can even be sure that if Quinn gives him an injection at this time, and endures the torture that is worse than death, at most his physical data can only be increased by about 0.3 points. And as the number of injections increases, it is estimated that after a few injections, the effect will be completely lost. But now it's different. I finally found a way to, stably, improve my strength. To be more accurate, I finally found a famous teacher who can help me train and steadily improve my strength. Exclamation mark. Although the speed of improvement is not fast, to be honest, the total value of each stick is less than a little, which is far from the aura of the protagonist of 3 Sticks. But Darren is already quite satisfied. Come on, Kaido-sensei. Even if my bones are broken, even if my teeth are smashed, I will not end the class easily. Darren grinned, burst to the maximum speed, and rushed to Kaido in an instant. 5 fingers opened and bent. The index finger and middle finger were put together, and the ring finger and little finger were put together, forming a domineering force that destroyed everything. Dragon Claw Fist. The 3-finger Dragon Claw tore through the void and drew a dark light. Dragon Claw. Kaido couldn't help but be stunned by Darren's fierce attack and the madness in his eyes. The mace was swung from bottom to top, blocking the dark Dragon Claw tightly. Clang. Sparks flew and air waves burst out. Come on, Kaido, kill me if you dare. The Vice Admiral's fierce smile was illuminated by the flying sparks, and the bloodstains on his lips were shocking. You are looking for death. Kaido's pupils shrank, and he was furious. The terrifying power from the mythical beast shook the Vice Admiral of the Navy and made him retreat step by step. At the same time, the mace suddenly burst into black and red thunder. Roaring Thunder Bagua. This is a stick wrapped with the domineering color domineering. The black and red color immediately occupied the void in front of him, and the picture in front of him began to become blurred. The air seemed to be shattered by the terrible power of this stick. Darren immediately felt a more terrible sense of oppression than the previous stick, and released all his domineering color domineering without hesitation to weaken part of the impact. Fist Bone. Supporting the numbing feeling of his scalp brought by the fear of dying, he punched again seriously. Bang! The blast roared out like thunder. Kaido's messy black hair and the white cape behind the Vice Admiral danced wildly in the opposite direction. Countless lightning exploded like fireworks, shaking the sea of clouds. The ground between the two finally couldn't bear such an exaggerated force impact, and a huge bottomless crack appeared with a rip, extending for several kilometers. Dust flew. Kaido swung his stick furiously. The armed color domineering covering the surface of Darren's arm continued to shatter, exploding into a blood mist. His body flew backwards again and sank into the mountain wall in the distance. The whole mountain shook violently, and with the spread of a large number of cracks, countless boulders rolled down from the peak, shaking the ground. Quinn, who was far away, watched this scene, his eyes twitching constantly, and he couldn't help but gasp. Boss Kaido is furious. Well, I should be safe now. He rolled his eyes and turned back into human form. He casually directed his flustered subordinates to put out the fire while happily lighting a cigar. With this blow, even if I am an ancient animal, I will be finished. Tisk 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 tisk, that marine is dead. What? Quinn suddenly widened his eyes, his chin dropped to the ground, and his cigar hung in the air. A bloody figure suddenly rushed out from the rock wall of the mountain. As if he didn't care about his life, he attacked Kaido again. What's going on? Chapter 47. So this is what it feels like. What's going on? That marine is not going to die. Quinn's eyes were about to jump out of his sockets. He didn't notice that his mouth was burned by the cigar. He stared at the Vice Admiral of the Navy who flew towards Kaido again with disbelief. Not far away, Jin also looked stunned. On the one hand, he was shocked by the tenacious will and tough physique of the Marine, and on the other hand, he was deeply puzzled by Darren's actions. After the 2 fights just now, the winner of the 2 had been decided. Logically speaking, with Darren's sinister character, there was no need for him to stay any longer. He had destroyed most of the arsenal buildings in the Julie district and achieved the goal of this operation. It would be meaningless to continue to fight with Brother Kaido, except for increasing his injuries. If he continued to fight like this, his injuries would only get worse, and he might even be left in Wano country in the end. What on earth is going on? Jin's eyes flashed with doubt. Does the Marine have any backup plan? Or does he really think he can beat Brother Kaido? The chaotic thoughts and various speculations made Jin dare not act rashly for a while. The Marine was too insidious and cunning. Every time they met this guy, nothing good happened. If Darren really has some backhands and trump cards that he hasn't used yet, he must be prepared for everything. Just when Quinn and Jin's thoughts were flying, Darren had collided with Kaido again. Boom. The blood-stained arm covered with armed color domineering hit Kaido's heavy mace again. The air wave invaded and spread, blowing his hair wildly. Oh, Navy kid, are you crazy? Kaido laughed grimly, and his thick dragon tail swung out a gust of wind. It's useless! Exclamation mark. No matter how many times you come, you can never be my opponent. That's not necessarily true. Darren laughed with blood oozing from the corner of his mouth. After the previous blow, his personal panel has changed further. Physique plus 0.396. Strength plus 0.163. Speed plus 0.145. Armament Haki plus 0.732. Conqueror Haki plus 1.512. Closer. Closer and closer. Darren's eyes burst into a glittering starlight, unprecedentedly hot. Although there was no muscle in his body that didn't hurt. Although his arms and ribs had some bone, there were traces of ruptures. Although his internal organs were injured and his lungs were constantly surging with burning pain. But he could clearly feel that with every battle with Kaido, his strength was getting stronger. Not much. But it was definitely getting stronger. Getting closer. He was getting closer to that realm, the realm where he could truly compete with the many strong men on this sea. Let the stick education be more intense. Darren grinned, his white teeth were already stained red. You don't know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. Kaido roared furiously, and the club wrapped with domineering power hit Darren's head again like thunder. Bang! Darren's mouth and nose burst into blood, and a broken tooth mixed with blood flew up. The whole person shot into the ground like a cannonball again, smashing a groove hundreds of meters long. Dust rose everywhere. Before Kaido, Quinn and Jin could recover, the blood-soaked figure of the Navy Vice Admiral rushed towards Kaido again. Ha 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 ha. Not enough. Not enough. Not enough. He laughed very wantonly. Looking for death. Kaido glared with bloodshot eyes, took a step forward, and held the mace with both hands at the same time. Swish. A bunch of black and red thunder suddenly spread around his body, as if waving a huge lightning, and knocked out with a club again. Roaring thunder Bagua. Boom. Darren's figure flew backwards again at a faster speed than before, and directly sank into the distant mountains, almost smashing through the mountains. Dust rose into the sky, and huge roars came one after another. The entire Julie district seemed to shake, as if a small earthquake had occurred. This should be done. Quinn stared at the collapsed mountains with his eyes twitching. He couldn't believe that there was really someone in this sea who could take so many sticks from his monster captain head-on. However, the next scene made his eyelids twitch wildly. In the distant mountains, the tall figure stood up again in the thick dust. What kind of monster is this? Quinn took a breath and his face turned pale. He exclaimed in disbelief, it is impossible for humans to have such a strong physique. Even an awakened animal-type devil fruit user can't do this. He suddenly seemed to realize something and took 2 steps back subconsciously. Unless. A hand suddenly covered his mouth tightly. Shut up. Jin, who covered Quinn's mouth, growled with his eyelids twitching wildly. Quinn made a sound, waved his hands and feet, and finally pointed in that direction with an extremely anxious look. I really didn't expect that the latest breakthrough turned out to be this. The low, hoarse voice of the Vice Admiral came from the distant mountains, with an inexplicable smile. Jin's pupils suddenly shrank. A blood-stained military boot suddenly poked out from the dust and stepped lightly on the ground. However, when this foot landed, boom! A terrifying sound like a giant beast crushing the earth was heard. Dust rose like a column, and the wind was fierce. The figure of the Vice Admiral slowly emerged from it. The blood dyed his uniform and cloak red, his arms and face were swollen and bleeding, but his eyes were still hot. Kaido's eyes condensed. I don't know if it was not an illusion. He felt a kindred spirit from Darren at this moment. This kindred spirit gave Kaido a bad feeling, so he did not hesitate and took action. Swish! He swung the mace in the air, and a stick spirit shock wave shot out, tearing through all obstacles in its path and shooting towards the Vice Admiral of the Navy. Ming Di. This is similar to the way a great swordsman slashes out sword energy, using the mace to blast out the energy. However, facing Kaido's attack that was enough to destroy the warship, Darren suddenly pulled up an interested smile. Without any blocking or dodging, he went straight up. Under the shocked and horrified eyes of Quinn and Jin, he met the Admiral's face. Bang! The shock wave of the mace hit the Admiral's face and chest heavily, and the powerful impact force knocked him's body was knocked back step by step, sliding back dozens of meters. Dazzling light bloomed, and the powerful shock wave continued to spread. Finally, it dissipated with a bang. The wind was fierce, blowing up the blood-colored Navy cloak. The figure of the Navy Vice Admiral appeared again. He tilted his head, raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, and smiled at the three people with horrified expressions. It almost worked. Unscathed. Quinn swallowed his saliva. Jin's pupils shook violently. Kaido's face was full of disbelief. I saw a trace of extremely hard light flowing out of Darren's skin. They suddenly recognized this ability. Darren moved his neck, making a crackling sound, and squeezed the air with both fists. The eyes were extremely fanatical. So this is the feeling. Physique. 90. Indestructible body. Today I resumed updating. I have caught a lot of colds recently. Please take care of yourself, big guys. Chapter 48. Indestructible. It's amazing. Darren grinned and tore off his tattered military uniform, revealing his well-trained upper body muscles. His naked upper body was covered in blood, and it looked terrifying. However, at this moment, the blood-stained skin seemed to be flowing with a cold and hard light. Darren felt the changes in his body, and a defiant smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It was only an increase of 1 or 2 points, but he could clearly feel that his physical toughness had improved significantly since he entered the 90-point mark. Indestructible body. Even if he was locked by Seastone, he could rely on his pure physical defense to resist various extreme punishments such as knife slashing, axe slashing, thunder burning, poison wine soaking, etc. He was called an undead monster. Darren didn't expect that he wanted to train his strength and armed color domineering, but in the end, it was his physique that had been dormant for a long time that broke through the shackles first. This is really a pleasant surprise. Darren subconsciously glanced at the fat man Quinn, who was dumbfounded in the distance, and grinned. However, this smile made Quinn's face change drastically, and the fat on his face trembled. Why are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me? Why are you smiling at me? Facing the murderous eyes of Kaido and Jin, Quinn was so scared that his fat face turned pale, and he gritted his teeth and said, This has nothing to do with me. As if to prove something, he took a step forward. A huge metal arm was raised, and with the dazzling light gathered from the mechanical claws, a burst of laser beams suddenly penetrated the void and came out. Black flames. The world in front of him suddenly darkened, and a golden laser beam came to Darren in an instant. Strands of purple electric light surged in the depths of his pupils, and the perception of the observation hockey had allowed him to see the clear trajectory of the laser beam. But he did not make any evasive movements. He just raised his hand with a grim smile and grabbed the laser beam directly. Boom! A huge explosion rose into the sky, and the area within a radius of 100 meters instantly turned into a blazing sea of fire. Black smoke billowed up, and the hot air waves continued to spread, blowing away countless rocks. Did it work? Quinn squinted his eyes and lowered his voice. Jin on the side had a gloomy face, and his eyes under the mask flashed with fear. It almost worked. A voice with a hoarse smile came from afar. The figure of the Vice Admiral of the Navy walked out of the sea of fire slowly, and the arm that intercepted the laser beam with bare hands was emitting wisps of black smoke. From a distance, this man was like a demon from hell, exuding an indomitable aura. No matter how powerful the power of technology is, it is only a replica after all. Compared with Borsellino's moves, you are still a little worse, fatty. Darren raised his hand and looked at the traces of mild burns on his palm, and his narrowed eyes revealed a trace of smile. If it was Borsellino's full-strength laser beam, I am afraid that even if I now have an indestructible body, I will definitely be severely burned. Of course, this is the defense of pure physical strength. If it is covered with armed color domineering as a defense, it may not be the case. Darren clenched his fist and extinguished the remaining flame in his hand. I have to admit that this indestructible body is indeed extremely powerful. Darren estimated that with his current physical strength, any attack that was not entangled with hockey would probably not have any effect on him. Even if it was an attack entangled with armament hockey, it would depend on the strength of the entangled hockey. If the attacker's hockey did not reach the level of internal destruction, Ryuo, even if the defense could be successfully broken, it would most likely only be a superficial injury. But it must be admitted that an overly strong physique does give people a feeling of overconfidence. At least for the beam of light from Fatty Quinn just now, he was able to dodge it with his greatly increased observation hockey, but at that moment, Darren found that he was too lazy to dodge. Although this was a factor of testing physical defense, to be honest, with this indestructible body, why would he practice observation hockey? Fortunately, he went to find Kotaku First Lee. At the moment when his mind flashed, Darren roughly sensed the current panel data. Physique: 90.001 Indestructible body. Strength: 79.591. Speed: 79.415. Fruit ability development: 85.444 covering the island. Armament hockey: 62.315. Observation hockey: 72.887 Magnetic field induction. Conqueror hockey: 62.091. Almost. Darren narrowed his eyes. I didn't expect you to really reach this level. At this time, a dull voice like thunder suddenly sounded. Darren turned his head and saw that Kaido's breath suddenly calmed down. For so many years, no one has ever been able to cultivate his physique to my level. Kaido lowered his head, and his long black hair fell down. An indescribable fierce fighting spirit, like a huge vortex storm, is constantly condensing in his monster-like dragon man body. Very good. Kaido suddenly raised his head, staring at Darren with his bloodshot eyes, and laughed happily. Oh, Darren kid, you are qualified to fight me head-on. Boom. The exploding domineering storm of domineering color burst out from his body, turning into a bunch of terrifying black and red lightning, radiating out. Densely occupied the entire dark sky, reflecting Kaido's hideous and cheerful face in light and dark. A strong wind like purgatory descended, sweeping across the entire Wano country. The clouds were shattered and disintegrated, and the whole world seemed to have lost all colors, leaving only the domineering figure like a ghost. Come on, Darren kid. Kaido held the mace in one hand, and his strong lower limbs covered with dragon scales suddenly sank down. Darren's pupils shrank. This guy, his aura has changed. Crack, boom. The ground first cracked, and then a huge pit exploded. Kaido's figure suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he had appeared above the head of the vice admiral, holding the mace with both hands at the same time, raising it high. The speed was so fast that it even gave people the illusion of surpassing lightning. Ziz. The indescribable threat of death came, making every inch of Darren's skin feel stinging. There are only 2 chapters, and I am still having a fever. Take care of yourself and support me. Chapter 49: A madman who likes to be beaten. The exploding storm turned into substantial pressure, crushing from the sky above his head. The mace wrapped with the domineering aura has not fallen yet, and the terrifying force that can crush everything has already crushed and torn the ground under Darren's feet, and raised countless rocks. Although Kaido's every move is just a swing of the stick at different angles and different strengths. But at this moment, Darren undoubtedly felt the terrible power of this stick. This is different from the last time he and Barrack jointly performed the combined attack technique. This time he can only rely on his own strength to take Kaido's move. The 3rd generation of the world, the induction of Naraku. The move named after the 4 great kings, destroys the opponent's will and body with overwhelming domineering power. Ha 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 ha. This is the fight I want. Darren suddenly burst into a rebellious laugh, his eyes full of anger and fighting spirit suddenly lit up. With a bang, his feet pierced deeply into the ground like two nails, and the iron fist of the inheritance garp came up from top to bottom. Fist bone, indestructible. The arm with an extremely cold light clenched into a fist, and the indestructible body was instantly covered with hard like armed color domineering, wrapped in a majestic force. And hit Kaido's stick heavily. The world was silent for a moment. Darren's body sank suddenly, his feet sank deeply into the ground, splashing large pieces of gravel. Boom! The earth-shaking roar suddenly burst out, and the surging impact wave spread out wildly in all directions with the two people as the center. It seemed that a tsunami had occurred on the earth, rolling up huge waves of mud hundreds of meters high. The storm that expanded and radiated caused huge waves in the outer sea of Wano country. The sky was dim and the clouds were torn apart. Ah! Kaido and Darren's eyes had already turned red, and they gritted their teeth and roared hysterically. Darren kid, I admit that your physical strength is enough to be compared with mine. Kaido held the mace in both hands and pressed Darren down inch by inch. The jumping lightning made his hideous face look like a madman. But Kaido's fanged mouth suddenly raised a sinister arc. Haki is the most powerful force in this sea. As soon as the voice fell, Kaido the muscles of his arms suddenly bulged like magma, and a violent breath gushed out of his body. Dense lightning roared in the void, destroying the armed color domineering wrapped around Darren's body, and even tearing his indestructible body. Boom! The second stage of domineering burst. Darren was knocked into the ground. Under the impact of the exaggerated force, the ground within a radius of several kilometers collapsed several meters downward, and dust rushed into the sky. Huge bottomless cracks spread out from the landing point of the mace, and there was almost no end in sight. The fierce wind spread out, forcing Jin and Quinn in the distance to raise one arm to cover their cheeks. They stared at the hellish scene with shock on their faces, and their pupils trembled. To force the boss to this point, what is the structure of that navy? Quinn said tremblingly, and the fat on his face trembled. He has to fall down now, woo-woo-woo. Jin, who was beside him, covered his mouth tightly again, his eyes oozing red, and gnashing his teeth and said, "If you say these weird words again, I will kill you directly." Quinn's face flushed, his eyes rolled, revealing grievance. But before he could react, the bloody figure of the Navy Vice Admiral had jumped out from the ground again. The black hair mixed with mud and blood was flying, and his expression was laughing wildly. Ha 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 ha. It's so good, come again. Jin. Quinn. Boom. Under the eyes of the two of them who saw a ghost, the two figures collided again. It's useless. Whether it's strength, speed, armed color domineering or domineering color domineering, you are not as good as me. Kaido roared with red eyes, as if he was really angry. No matter how many times you come, you can never be my opponent. The mace tightly grasped by both hands was wrapped with the exploding thunder, and was swung with unimaginable extreme speed and strength, rolling up violent wind and waves, and the shadow of the mace in the sky tightly covered Darren's figure. There was no blind spot, completely blocking Darren's escape space, and the blasting airwaves blew up thrilling huge pits on the ground. Gundali Longshungjin. It is also one of the powerful moves named after the four great kings. Each strike is wrapped with a strong domineering aura, which blasted the body of the Navy Vice Admiral into a large blur of blood mist. Darren gritted his teeth, and every cell in his body felt a tearing pain and a feeling of weakness that was squeezed to the extreme. The blood blurred his vision. For a while, he could only passively block and retreat step by step. Although the facts are just as Kaido said, he has obviously suppressed himself in all aspects. But his physical strength has entered the realm of Vajra indestructible. Even if Kaido wants to kill him, he can't do it for a while. This is the top monster on this sea, the fight between the top warriors. Those top warriors, with their inhuman physique, can easily fight for days and nights. Although Darren's strength is not at that level, he can hold on for a while with his indestructible body. Bang! Darren's figure was blown away again, and his feet plowed hundreds of meters of grooves on the ruined ground. The pair of military boots of amazing quality finally couldn't withstand such high intensity, ravage, at this time, and they were completely shattered. Darren, with blood all over his face, raised his hand to wipe the blood from his eyes, and his bare feet dug the ground with his 10 fingers, and roared again with a bang. "That's why I want to challenge you." The two collided again. Blast away. Collide. Blast away. Darren seemed to have transformed into an ancient beast that was tireless and painless, and madly challenged the strongest creature on land, sea and air, in front of him. Again and again. Again and again. In the distance, Jin and Quinn were staring with their eyes wide open, their mouths dry, and finally their eyes gradually became numb. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that there was someone in this sea who could fight with their monster-like boss for so long when their strength was suppressed. And as time went by, Kaido himself gradually began to doubt from the initial rage, and then gradually had an uneasy premonition. He was clearly crushing this guy. Every blow clearly injured this guy and bleed. The Navy kid had been knocked down countless times, but after each knockdown, he would show a weird smile. It felt like the more he was beaten and the more injured he was, the more excited he became. Kaido had never met such a madman. This scene made him feel a little numb for no reason. Chapter 50 The strongest sensei in the Navy, Army and Air Force. Could this kid have some perverted hobby? Is there any pleasure in being beaten? This weird thought suddenly popped up in Kaido's mind, and he felt a chill all over his body. It's getting more and more wrong. At the moment of thinking this, the Vice Admiral of the Navy rushed over again with a bloody body. Damn it! Get out of my way! Looking at the increasingly perverted and weird smile on Darren's face, Kaido felt a chill down his spine. He gritted his teeth, decided not to waste time with this perverted Navy kid. On the arms covered with hard green dragon scales, large muscles suddenly bulged, as if bursting out the strongest power of the dragon man form. Zzzzzzzzz. Large bundles of purple-black lightning suddenly spread and expanded, like a huge network covering the sky and the sun. In the center of the thunder network was the black mace, Ba Jai Jia. Die. Kaido roared furiously, took a step forward and caused the ground to crack, and all the strength in his body gathered. A stick was swung out. Great mighty thunder Bagua. Like a flash of lightning, Kaido passed Darren's figure in an instant. The black and purple lightning condensed to the extreme seemed to burst out in an exaggerated nuclear explosion in an instant, and suddenly exploded on the back of the Navy Vice Admiral. Boom! The huge mushroom cloud mixed with the storm of purgatory rose into the sky. The world was silent for a moment. With the second burst of domineering, the Vice Admiral of the Navy spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure flew backwards like a rocket launcher. After crashing through more than a dozen small peaks, it sank deeply into the barrier of distant mountains. A large number of cracks emerged in the mountains, and dust was flying. The entire Julie area seemed to have an earthquake, shaking the ground. The sky collapsed and the wind was falling. Quinn looked at this scene with a dull expression and pale face. His mouth moved. Just when he was about to say something, he immediately reacted and covered his mouth in a hurry. Jin's eyes were extremely solemn. Kaido, holding a mace in one hand, fell heavily to the ground, his breath was slightly disordered, and his blood-red eyes stared at the mountains. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The smoke and dust were finally blown away by the fierce wind. On the rock wall of the distant mountain, a horrifying huge pit lay there. The wounded figure of the Vice Admiral was deeply embedded in the deep pit of the mountain, and blood could not stop oozing out of his mouth and nose. The position of his chest ribs was sunken into an exaggerated arc, and a broken rib even pierced through the skin, emitting a white color, which looked extremely terrifying. He was panting heavily, his face was as pale as paper. But his eyes looked at Kaido and the other two arrogantly, and laughed wantonly. Ha 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 ha, so happy. Seeing this scene, a trace of incomprehensible doubt flashed in the pupils of Quinn and Jin. This guy is still laughing. But soon, the doubt in their eyes was completely replaced by shock, and then turned into horror. How could this be? His breath. The two of them looked at each other, and both saw the astonishment and horror in each other's eyes. "You've become stronger," Kaido roared in disbelief. In their observation haki, the aura of the Vice Admiral was actually getting stronger. His vitality had already waned to the extreme, like a candle in the wind. But the aura emanating from his body was indeed stronger than before. "Then, let's stop today's training." Darren laughed crazily. He raised his hand, pressed the rib that pierced the skin, and pressed hard. There was a muffled sound that made Quinn's eyes tremble, and the broken rib was actually pressed back by him. What a rewarding lesson. Darren panted wildly, spitting blood, but laughed very wantonly. At this moment, his personal panel data has become like this. Physique, 90.001 indestructible body. Strength, 80.991 giant power. Speed, 80.917 shaving speed. Fruit ability development, 85.445 island coverage. Armament haki, 65.315. Observation haki, 72.887 magnetic field induction. Conqueror haki, 63.091. Strength and speed attributes finally broke through the 80-point shackles under Kaido's strongest stick, beating, just now like a nuclear explosion. And just as Darren had estimated before, similar to the physique attribute, strength and speed also awakened special abilities after breaking through the 80-point limit. Giant power, any attack has the power that is not inferior to that of an adult giant warrior, and can grow with the growth of strength. Shaving speed, any explosive charge or dodge has a speed that surpasses the Navy's 6 styles, shaving. I finally succeeded in breaking through. Darren felt as if his whole body was about to fall apart. After carrying so many sticks from Kaido, he finally achieved this goal. As Darren said this, Kaido's pupils suddenly shrank into needles. He realized it belatedly. This Navy kid came to him and wanted to use him to train him. It turned out that the smile he showed when he was beaten just now was not because he had a perverted hobby of masochism, but because he felt that his strength was improving. This thought came out at the moment. An unprecedented rage surged from Kaido's chest and instantly occupied his pupils. "You damn Navy kid." His eyes were filled with ferocious bloodshot, and violent killing intent gushed out. "I am Kaido the Beast. The strongest creature in this sea. You actually used me to help you train and improve your strength." Darren grinned. No, you are not just the strongest creature on land, sea and air." A sharp black light suddenly flew in front of him, carrying his body and quickly flew into the sky. "To me, you are the world's strongest teacher on land, sea and air." Ha 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 ha. Darren stood in the air covered in blood, gracefully touching his chest and bowing. "Thank you for your guidance, Kaido-sensei." He smiled at Kaido. "I will come to visit you again some other day." Kaido staggered back 2 steps as if struck by lightning. After saying this, Darren paused and turned to look at Quinn. As the fat man in overalls retreated in horror, Darren gave him a meaningful smile. Then, before everyone could react, the remaining physical strength turned into a violent magnetic field, and the figure of the Vice Admiral suddenly soared into the sky and disappeared in the distant sea of clouds in an instant. Quinn's eyes twitched. "Wait, damn." He suddenly reacted and roared hoarsely. "Why are you looking at me? Why are you smiling at me? Damn, come back and explain clearly." His voice stopped abruptly. 2 murderous figures stood behind him at some point. A huge shadow loomed over him, and Quinn's back felt cold. He turned around shivering and smiled flatteringly. This really has nothing to do with me. Help." What greeted him was a mace wrapped in purple thunder and a long sword burning with flames.